A millionaire hired a humble woman to be the nanny of his young daughters. One day, the rain pounded mercilessly against the windows of the dilapidated foster home on the outskirts of Boston. Sarah Miller's heart raced as she crouched in the darkness, listening to the muffled cries coming from the basement. After 6 months of undercover work as a social worker, she had finally gathered enough evidence of abuse. But tonight was different. The screams were worse than ever before. "Please, no more," a child's voice pierced through the storm. Sarah's hands trembled as she dialed 911, her voice barely a whisper. "They're hurting him again. 1247 Maple Street. Please hurry," she ended the call, knowing the police were already on their way. But the next sounds, the crack of a belt and a pained whimper, made her realize she couldn't wait any longer. Sarah moved silently down the stairs, her years in the foster system having taught her exactly which floorboards would betray her presence. The basement door was locked, but she had anticipated this. With trembling fingers, she retrieved the key she had secretly copied weeks ago. The scene that greeted her made her blood run cold. 8-year-old Tommy lay curled in a corner, his small body shaking with sobs. The Hendersons, his foster parents, loomed over him, Mr. Henderson with his belt raised, Mrs. Henderson watching with cold indifference. "Stop!" Sarah's voice rang out, stronger than she felt. "Get away from him." The Hendersons whirled around, surprise quickly morphing into rage. "Who do you think you are?" Mr. Henderson snarled, advancing toward her. "This is none of your business." "Every child's safety is my business," Sarah replied, standing her ground despite her pounding heart. She could hear sirens in the distance getting closer. Just a few more minutes. "You're just a social worker," Mrs. Henderson sneered. "You have no right to be here at this hour. Get out before we call the police." "I already did," Sarah said, edging toward Tommy. The boy looked up at her with a mix of fear and desperate hope that broke her heart. She had seen that same look in the mirror too many times during her own childhood. Mr. Henderson's face contorted with fury. He lunged forward, the belt whistling through the air. Sarah ducked, feeling the wind of it passing inches from her face. She scrambled toward Tommy, placing herself between him and his tormentors. "Don't touch him," she warned, her voice steel. "It's over. The police are coming, and they'll find the recordings, the photographs, everything. You'll never hurt another child again." The sound of breaking glass upstairs, followed by heavy footsteps, caused everyone to freeze. "Police, everyone stay where you are." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Officers swarmed the basement, handcuffs clicked into place, and Tommy clung to Sarah like a lifeline. As paramedics examined the boy's injuries, Detective James Parker approached Sarah. "Miss Miller, that was incredibly dangerous," he admonished, though his eyes showed respect. "You should have waited for backup." Sarah watched as Tommy was gently led upstairs, his small hand clutching a shock blanket. "Some things are worth the risk, Detective. I couldn't let him suffer one more minute. Not when I could stop it." "Like someone stopped it for you," Detective Parker asked softly. Sarah touched the faded scar on her wrist, a reminder of her own foster care nightmare 20 years ago. "No," she whispered. "Nobody stopped it for me. That's why I had to stop it for him." As the Hendersons were led away in handcuffs, Sarah caught Mrs. Henderson's venomous glare. "You'll regret this," the woman spat. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Sarah held her gaze steadily. "No, Mrs. Henderson. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Because unlike you, I know what it feels like to be that scared little child. And I swore I would never let another child feel that way again." In the aftermath of the raid, Sarah sat with Tommy in the back of an ambulance, his small hand gripping hers tightly. "Are they going away forever?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah assured him, smoothing his hair. "They can't hurt you anymore. I promise." What Sarah didn't know then was that this promise would soon be tested in ways she could never imagine. The Hendersons' arrest would set in motion a chain of events that would shake Boston's elite social circles to their core, force Sarah to confront her own painful past, and redefine the very meaning of family. But in that moment, holding Tommy's hand under the flashing red and blue lights, she was certain of one thing: she would protect him with her life, no matter the cost. This was more than just another case. This was about breaking the cycle of abuse, about standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. As rain continued to fall, washing away the darkness of the night, Sarah made a silent vow to the scared little girl she once was. This time would be different. This time, justice would be served. Sarah Miller's earliest memories were painted in shades of fear and loneliness. Born to a teenage mother who struggled with addiction, her childhood was a revolving door of strangers' homes and broken promises. By age 7, she had already learned to read the subtle signs of an adult's mood, to make herself invisible when tension filled the air, and to muffle her cries into a pillow at night. The breaking point came when she was 12. Her fifth foster home seemed perfect at first: a spacious house in suburban Boston, foster parents who smiled warmly at social worker visits, and even her own room decorated in soft pink. But behind closed doors, Frank and Marie Davidson were masters of manipulation and abuse. They knew exactly where to hit so bruises wouldn't show, how to terrorize without leaving evidence, and most crucially, how to charm the authorities. For 18 months, Sarah endured their calculated cruelty. She watched as other foster children came and went, their spirits broken one by one. The final straw came when Frank turned his attention to 8-year-old Amy, a new arrival with bright eyes and trust that hadn't yet been shattered. One night, Sarah heard Amy's muffled whimpers from the basement. Something inside her snapped. With trembling hands, she dialed 911, then armed herself with Frank's own camera. The photos she took that night were blurry and dark, but they were enough. When the police arrived, they found evidence of years of systematic abuse. The Davidsons were arrested, and their house of horrors was finally exposed. But the system that had failed to protect Sarah for so long wasn't finished with her yet. Shuttled between temporary homes and juvenile facilities, she struggled with anger and trust issues. Social workers labeled her as difficult and traumatized, files growing thicker with each failed placement. It seemed her story would become another statistic, another life broken by a broken system. Then came Elizabeth Bennett, a retired teacher with steel grey hair and eyes that saw straight through Sarah's defensive walls. Unlike previous foster parents, Elizabeth didn't demand instant trust or forced affection. Instead, she offered something Sarah had never experienced before: patience and unwavering support. In Elizabeth's modest home, surrounded by books and the smell of freshly baked cookies, Sarah began to heal. Elizabeth taught her that strength wasn't about surviving alone, but about having the courage to let others in. Under her guidance, Sarah's grades improved dramatically. She discovered a passion for psychology and child development, understanding that her experiences, though painful, gave her unique insight into the minds of troubled children. Elizabeth's influence extended beyond academics. She taught Sarah that true strength lay in vulnerability, in allowing oneself to care despite the risk of hurt. When Sarah graduated high school with honors, Elizabeth was there, beaming with pride. With Elizabeth's encouragement and careful financial planning, Sarah enrolled in Boston University, majoring in social work with a minor in child psychology. College opened new doors, but Sarah never forgot her mission. She volunteered at youth centers, working with children who reminded her too much of herself. Her professors noticed her exceptional empathy and understanding of trauma, encouraging her to pursue advanced studies. By 25, she had earned her master's degree and was working in the same system that had once failed her, but this time she was determined to be the change she wished she had found as a child. Elizabeth's death from cancer during Sarah's final year of graduate school nearly derailed everything. But even in her last moments, Elizabeth remained Sarah's guiding light. "You have a gift," she had whispered, holding Sarah's hand. "Your pain hasn't broken you, it's given you the power to heal others. Promise me you'll use it." Sarah kept that promise. She developed innovative approaches to identifying signs of abuse, created support programs for foster children, and never stopped fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Her colleagues often questioned her intense dedication, her willingness to go above and beyond protocol, but they couldn't argue with her results. Now, at 32, Sarah Miller had become exactly what she needed most as a child: a fierce advocate for the voiceless, a protector of the vulnerable, and a beacon of hope for those lost in the system. But as she would soon discover, her greatest challenge and opportunity to heal would come from an unexpected quarter, testing everything she believed about family, forgiveness, and the power of love. The Anderson mansion stood imposingly on Beacon Hill, its elegant Victorian architecture a testament to old Boston money and social standing. Behind its meticulously maintained facade, however, the perfect family image that William and Catherine Anderson had crafted was beginning to show cracks. William Anderson, at 45, had built his law firm from the ground up, specializing in corporate law and turning it into one of Boston's most prestigious practices. His sharp mind and ruthless determination had earned him both admirers and enemies in equal measure. But success came at a price. His 60-hour workweeks meant his family had become more of a concept than a reality. Catherine Anderson, his wife of 15 years, channeled her Harvard biochemistry degree into groundbreaking cancer research at Massachusetts General Hospital. Her work was personal, driven by the loss of her mother to the disease. While her dedication was admirable, it left little time for family life. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was developing treatments to save others while her own family life was in critical condition. The strain between William and Catherine manifested in subtle ways: curt exchanges over breakfast, separate social calendars, and an increasing reliance on household staff to manage their home and children. Their arguments, though conducted in hushed tones behind closed doors, created an undercurrent of tension that permeated the entire household. Their twin daughters, Emma and Emily, aged 6, were bright spots in the increasingly cold atmosphere of the Anderson home. Despite their parents' busy schedules, the girls maintained an infectious joy and resilience. Emma, the more outgoing of the two, took on the role of protector, while Emily's quieter nature masked a keen sensitivity to the emotional undercurrents around her. The Anderson social circle consisted of Boston's elite judges, surgeons, and old money families who traced their lineage back to the Mayflower. At charity galas and social functions, they maintained the facade of the perfect family. Catherine would smile graciously while discussing her latest research, and William would charm potential clients with practiced ease. The twins, when present, were praised for their impeccable manners and matching designer dresses. But the truth was far more complex. William's law firm was facing its first major crisis in years, a potential scandal involving a prominent client that threatened to unravel everything he'd built. Catherine's research grant was under review, with funding cuts looming on the horizon. The pressure was mounting, and their marriage was bearing the strain. The household staff whispered about the growing tension. Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper who had served the family for a decade, watched with increasing concern as the distance between Mr. and Mrs. Anderson grew. She saw how the twins sought comfort in each other's company rather than their parents', creating their own small world of secret languages and shared understanding. It was Mrs. Reynolds who first suggested hiring a full-time nanny. The girls need stability, she had told Catherine during a rare moment of candor. Someone who can be there consistently. Catherine, caught between guilt and necessity, agreed. William, absorbed in damage control at his firm, merely nodded his approval without looking up from his papers. The Anderson family's wealth provided every material comfort. The twins' playroom resembled a high-end toy store. Their closets were filled with designer clothes, and their education was provided by Boston's most exclusive private school. But money couldn't buy what the girls truly needed: time, attention, and emotional presence from their parents. Their lives operated like a well-oiled machine, with scheduled activities, planned meals, and coordinated social appearances. Yet beneath this perfectly choreographed existence lay a growing void. The twins, young as they were, had learned to navigate this emotional minefield with remarkable adaptability. They knew when to be quiet during their father's important phone calls, how to comfort their mother after long days at the lab, and most importantly, how to depend on each other when both parents were absent. The Andersons represented a common paradox of wealthy families having everything except what mattered most. They were rich in resources but poor in connection, successful by every external measure but struggling with the fundamental task of being a family. What they needed wasn't another employee or status symbol, but someone who could bridge the growing gaps between them, someone who understood that real family bonds couldn't be bought or scheduled. Little did they know that their search for a nanny would bring them Sarah Miller, a woman whose own broken past would become the key to healing their family's future. At first glance, Emma and Emily Anderson appeared identical in every way, from their golden curls to their matching private school uniforms, but those who knew them well understood that the sisters were as different as sun and shadow, each unique in ways that complemented the other perfectly. Emma, older by 3 minutes, embodied confidence and protective instincts beyond her 6 years. She was the first to raise her hand in class, the first to try new things, and always the first to defend her sister from any perceived slight. Her laugh was loud and unreserved, her opinions stated with unwavering certainty. When their parents argued behind closed doors, it was Emma who would create distractions for Emily, organizing impromptu tea parties or staging elaborate stuffed animal performances. Emily, in contrast, moved through the world with quiet grace. Her eyes held a depth of understanding that sometimes unnerved adults. While Emma commanded attention, Emily observed, processing everything around her with remarkable sensitivity. She was the one who noticed when Mrs. Reynolds' hands shook from arthritis, who left small drawings to cheer up their mother after difficult days at the lab, who sensed the mounting tension in their home long before it became apparent to others. Together, they had developed their own private language, a complex system of gestures, expressions, and made-up words that allowed them to communicate silently. This secret language had evolved from necessity during their father's important phone calls, during formal dinner parties, during those moments when children were expected to be seen but not heard. Their bond extended beyond typical sibling closeness. When Emily had nightmares, Emma would sense it before the first whimper, already climbing into her sister's bed to offer comfort. When Emma's impulsiveness led to trouble, Emily's quiet presence had a calming effect that no adult could achieve. They were each other's constant in a world of inconsistent parental attention and rotating household staff. School became another arena where their differences shone. Emma excelled in mathematics and science, approaching problems with logical determination that matched their father's analytical mind. Emily showed remarkable talent in art and music, her creativity flourishing in ways that both delighted and puzzled her academically minded parents. Their teachers often commented on how the twins balanced each other, Emma encouraging Emily to speak up in class, Emily helping Emma slow down and consider others' feelings. But beneath their seemingly perfect exterior, both girls carried deep insecurities. Emma's bravado masked a desperate need to prove herself worthy of her parents' attention. She collected achievements like Shield's perfect spelling tests, soccer trophies, piano recital awards, each one a plea for recognition that often went unnoticed in their parents' busy lives. Emily's quietness concealed a wells of emotion she struggled to express. She felt things deeply: her mother's exhaustion, her father's stress, the growing distance between her parents. Her art became her outlet, her drawings filled with complex emotions she couldn't verbalize. Sometimes she would sit for hours, creating intricate scenes of happy families, whole and together, unlike the fragmented reality of their own. The girls shared a massive playroom on the 3rd floor of the mansion, a space that had become their sanctuary. Here, among carefully organized toys and books, they created their own world. They transformed the antique dollhouse into stories of family healing, turned the reading nook into a secret command center, and used the craft table to create elaborate plans for getting their parents to spend more time at home. Their wealth provided endless material comforts, but both girls would have traded all their expensive toys for a simple family dinner where both parents were present and phones were put away. They noticed how their friends' parents attended school events together, how they shared looks of affection, how they seemed interested in the small details of their children's lives. The contrast with their own family life was stark and painful. Despite everything, Emma and Emily remained remarkably resilient. They had each other, and in many ways that was enough. They faced their parents' absences, the tension in their home, and the expectations of their social class as a united front. Their bond was their strength, their love for each other a constant in their uncertain world. What they needed, what they silently yearned for, was someone who could see them as individuals rather than a matched set, someone who could understand the complexity of their emotions without trying to fix or dismiss them. They needed a presence in their lives who could bridge the growing gap between their parents' world and their own. The world surrounding the Anderson family was populated by a complex web of individuals, each playing crucial roles in the unfolding drama. At the heart of the household staff was Mrs. Reynolds, the 60-year-old housekeeper whose loyalty to the family stretched back a decade. Her weathered hands and knowing eyes had witnessed the Anderson family's transformation from loving newlyweds to distant co-parents. Though she maintained professional boundaries, her heart ached for the twins, and she often left small treats outside their door after particularly tense evenings. Detective James Parker, a veteran of Boston Police Department's Special Victims Unit, maintained a close professional relationship with Sarah Miller. At 48, his 20 years of service had left him with graying temples and a profound understanding of humanity's capacity for both cruelty and compassion. He had been the lead investigator on the Davidson case years ago, and had watched Sarah transform from a traumatized victim into a fierce advocate for children's rights. Margaret Whitmore, the president of the Beacon Hill Parents Association, represented the more challenging aspects of the Andersons' social circle. Her perfectly coiffed appearance and razor-sharp smile masked a tendency to weaponize gossip and social influence. She viewed the Anderson family as chess pieces in her social games, their presence adding prestige to her carefully curated events. Dr. Robert Chen, the twins' pediatrician, saw beyond the family's polished exterior. His gentle manner and genuine concern made him one of the few adults the girls truly trusted. During checkups, he noticed things others missed: Emily's anxiety-induced stomach aches, Emma's occasional stress-related headaches. He had tried, subtly, to bring these concerns to Catherine's attention, but her packed schedule meant these conversations were often rushed and incomplete. The family's immediate neighbor, retired Judge Howard Sullivan, had known William since the beginning of his legal career. From his study window, he observed the comings and goings of the Anderson household with increasing concern. He remembered when William was a passionate young lawyer fighting for justice, not just billable hours. The changes in his former protege troubled him deeply. At Massachusetts General Hospital, Catherine's research assistant, Jennifer Morris, witnessed her boss's internal struggles. She saw how Catherine's phone would light up with missed calls from the twins' school, how her hands would shake slightly when making excuses for missing another family dinner. Jennifer became an unofficial keeper of Catherine's schedule, trying to create pockets of family time whenever possible. The twin school community at Brighton Academy included MS, Patricia Winters, their perceptive first-grade teacher. She noticed how Emma and Emily's artwork consistently depicted their family members as distant figures, separated by various obstacles. But during parent-teacher conferences, she tried to broach the subject delicately, but found both parents more interested in academic achievements than emotional well-being. Living above her modest flower shop 3 blocks away was Rebecca Torres, a former foster child who had crossed paths with Sarah during their time in the system. Now successful in her own right, Rebecca served as a testament to resilience and the possibility of healing. Her shop became a safe haven where Sarah could voice her doubts and fears without judgment. The community also included Thomas Bradford, William's longtime law partner, who recognized the warning signs of his friend's workaholic spiral but struggled to find ways to intervene. He remembered how William once spoke passionately about work-life balance before the firm's success consumed him. Detective Parker's partner, Officer Lisa Chen, no relation to Dr. Chen, had worked with Sarah on numerous cases. Her expertise in domestic violence and child abuse made her particularly attuned to the subtle signs of family dysfunction. She would play a crucial role in the events to come, her instincts helping to uncover deeper truths beneath surface appearances. These individuals formed a complex tapestry of relationships, each holding pieces of the puzzle that would eventually come together. Some, like Mrs. Reynolds and Dr. Chen, served as quiet guardians of the twins' well-being. Others, like Margaret Whitmore, represented the social pressures and expectations that contributed to the family's struggles. Each person's perspective added depth to the understanding of the Anderson family dynamics, from the household staff who witnessed daily tensions, to the professionals who saw the impact on the children, to the social circles that both supported and suffocated them. As events would unfold, these various players would find their lives increasingly intertwined, their actions and choices creating ripple effects that would ultimately contribute to both crisis and healing. The interview at the Anderson mansion was scheduled for precisely 2 p.m. on a crisp autumn afternoon. Sarah Miller stood at the ornate front door, her modest navy blazer and simple pearl earrings a gift from Elizabeth, carefully chosen to project professionalism without ostentation. She carried with her not just a portfolio of qualifications, but years of experience reading people and situations, a skill honed through survival. Catherine Anderson opened the door herself, a surprise that momentarily disrupted Sarah's prepared introduction. The renowned researcher looked exhausted beneath her perfect makeup, her designer suit slightly creased from a long day at the lab. "You must be Sarah Miller," she said, attempting a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Please come in. The agency speaks very highly of you." The foyer's grandeur crystal chandelier, marble floors, antique furnishings spoke of old money and careful curation. But Sarah's trained eye caught other details: scuff marks on the stairs where children played, a forgotten hair ribbon under an expensive vase, small signs of life beneath the perfection. Their conversation began formally in William's study, a room that smelled of leather and success. Catherine asked the expected questions about experience, qualifications, and references. Sarah answered with quiet confidence, but her attention was drawn to the family photographs on the wall, beautiful but staged, everyone smiling perfectly but not quite looking at each other. "Your credentials are impressive," Catherine noted, reviewing Sarah's file. "But I have to ask, why leave social work for nanny position? It seems like..." A step down the question carried an undercurrent of suspicion that Sarah had anticipated. "I believe in making direct impact," Sarah replied honestly. "In social work, I dealt with crises. As a nanny, I have the opportunity to prevent them. Every child deserves consistent support and understanding, regardless of their circumstances." Their discussion was interrupted by the sound of running feet. Emma burst into the study, Emily trailing behind more cautiously. "Mum, Mrs. Reynolds said we can't have cookies before dinner, but we always have cookies on Wednesday." Emma's voice carried the confidence of a practiced negotiator. Sarah watched the interaction carefully. Catherine's slight flinch at the interruption, her automatic reach for her buzzing phone, the way Emily hung back, observing. In that moment, Sarah saw beyond the pristine surface to the fractures beneath. "Girls," Catherine began, her tone straining for patience, "I'm in an important meeting." "Hi," Sarah interjected softly, turning to the twins. "I'm Sarah, and you must be Emma and Emily. Would you like to show me your favorite books while your mum finishes her work call?" The sisters exchanged their secret look, Emma curious, Emily cautious. "How did you know we like reading?" Emma demanded. Sarah smiled, pointing to the ink smudges on their fingers. "Detective work. Plus, I see you're holding The Secret Garden behind your back, Emily. That was my favorite book at your age, too." Emily's eyes widened with interest, while Emma's posture shifted from confrontational to intrigued. Catherine watched the interaction with surprise, noting how naturally Sarah had diffused the situation. Over the next hour, as the interview evolved into a more organic interaction, Sarah demonstrated her approach. She listened to Emma's elaborate stories without rushing her, noticed how Emily communicated through subtle gestures, and showed genuine interest in their individual personalities rather than treating them as a matched set. When William arrived home unexpectedly, his authoritative presence filling the room, Sarah observed the family dynamics shift. The girls became quieter, Catherine's shoulders tensed, and the warm atmosphere chilled noticeably. "I apologize for interrupting," William said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I hope the girls haven't been bothering you. They can be quite demanding of attention." "Not at all," Sarah replied, meeting his evaluating gaze steadily. "They're bright, perceptive children. They notice everything, including when adults truly listen to them." The pointed comment hung in the air. William's expression flickered with something recognition, perhaps, or discomfort. Catherine glanced between them, then made her decision. "When can you start?" she asked abruptly. Catherine, William began. "Shouldn't we discuss?" "The girls like her, William." "Did you notice Emily actually spoke? When was the last time that happened with a new person?" Sarah watched this exchange, already understanding the complex dynamics she would be stepping into. This wasn't just a job, it was an opportunity to help heal a fractured family, to prevent two young girls from experiencing the kind of emotional neglect that could scar them for life. Sarah's first few weeks at the Anderson mansion revealed peculiarities that went beyond typical family dysfunction. Late at night, she would hear hushed conversations from William's study, voices raised in angry whispers before abruptly falling silent. Documents disappeared from his desk, only to reappear in different locations, sometimes with entire sections mysteriously highlighted. The twins began reporting strange incidents. Emma claimed she saw someone watching the house from across the street, a dark figure that vanished when she tried to point it out to others. Emily, typically quiet, started having nightmares about the angry man, who stood outside their bedroom window despite their rooms being on the third floor. Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper, noticed items moving in the house. Family photographs would be rearranged, personal items displaced. One morning, she found Catherine's research papers scattered across the kitchen floor, though all doors and windows were securely locked. When she mentioned this to William, his face paled, and he quickly dismissed her concerns. Catherine's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She would receive mysterious phone calls that left her shaken, hastily ending conversations when others entered the room. Sarah once found her in the family library at midnight, frantically searching through old albums, tears streaming down her face. When questioned, Catherine merely mumbled something about making things right before hurrying away. The tension reached a new level when Sarah discovered a series of threatening notes carefully hidden in the twins' schoolbooks. The messages were cryptic, but menacing. The truth can't stay buried forever, and some secrets destroy families. When she attempted to discuss this with William, he became defensive, insisting they were probably just practical jokes from school classmates. One particularly unsettling incident occurred during a rainy afternoon. Sarah was helping Emily with her homework when Emma burst into the room, panic evident in her voice. "There's someone in Daddy's study," she exclaimed. "I saw them through the keyhole by the time Sarah investigated. The study was empty, but William's usually immaculate desk was in disarray, and his laptop was open to files he always kept carefully protected." The security system began malfunctioning, triggering false alarms at odd hours. The security company found no technical issues, yet the problems persisted. Sarah noticed that these incidents often coincided with William's late-night phone calls or Catherine's sudden departures from the house. Mrs. Reynolds confided in Sarah about strange phone calls to the house, someone asking detailed questions about the family's routine, particularly about the twins. The calls always came from blocked numbers, and the caller seemed to know intimate details about the household that only an insider would know. The twins' behavior also changed subtly. Emily started hiding her drawings, which had taken a darker turn. Shadowy figures and fragmented family portraits filled her sketchbook. Emma became unusually protective of her sister, refusing to let Emily out of her sight, as if sensing an approaching threat. One morning, Sarah found a photograph slipped under her door, an old picture of Catherine with another woman who looked remarkably like her, both smiling at the camera. The photo was torn in half and marked with a red question mark. When she tried to show it to Catherine, the photo had vanished from her pocket. The incidents culminated in a chilling discovery in the mansion's attic. While searching for old Christmas decorations, Sarah found a hidden box containing newspaper clippings about a decades-old scandal involving the Anderson family law firm. The articles hinted at covered-up crimes and silenced witnesses. Most disturbing was a handwritten notepaper clipped to the clippings. History repeats itself. Watch the children. Sarah began documenting everything, her social worker instincts kicking in. She noticed patterns. The strange occurrences intensified whenever William had important meetings at the firm, or when Catherine mentioned breakthrough progress in her research. There seemed to be a connection, but the pieces didn't quite fit together. The mansion's atmosphere grew heavier with unspoken tensions. Even the staff began whispering about curses and family secrets. Sarah knew better in her experience. The real horrors in life came from human actions, not supernatural sources. Someone was deliberately trying to unsettle the family, and the twins were caught in the crossfire. As Sarah lay awake at night, listening to the old house's creaks and settles, she couldn't shake the feeling that these weren't random incidents. They were warnings, pieces of a larger puzzle that threatened to shatter the Anderson family's carefully constructed facade. The question was who was behind it all, and what were they trying to reveal? The truth began unraveling on a stormy night when Sarah found Catherine sobbing in the library, clutching an old leather journal. The normally composed researcher looked broken, her designer clothes rumpled, her perfect facade cracked. "I can't keep lying," Catherine whispered, more to herself than to Sarah. "Emily needs to know." This moment of vulnerability opened a floodgate of revelations. Emily, it turned out, wasn't Catherine's biological child. 15 years ago, Catherine's twin sister Elizabeth had become pregnant during a tumultuous relationship with Michael Brooks, a promising young lawyer at William's firm. Elizabeth had died under mysterious circumstances shortly after giving birth, and Catherine had adopted the baby, raising her as her own alongside Emma. The deeper Sarah dug, the more complex the web became. William's law firm had been involved in covering up a massive corporate fraud scheme that had indirectly led to Elizabeth's death. Michael Brooks, devastated by Elizabeth's death and betrayed by the firm, had disappeared, but not before threatening to expose everything. Through careful investigation, Sarah discovered that William had orchestrated Michael's dismissal from the firm, using fabricated evidence to destroy his reputation. The guilt had eaten away at Catherine, who had convinced herself that keeping Emily ignorant of her true parentage was protecting her. But the weight of the lies had slowly poisoned their family relationships. Mrs. Reynolds provided crucial pieces of the puzzle. She remembered Elizabeth's frequent visits to the mansion before her death, the heated arguments with William, the mysterious accidents that seemed to follow her. The housekeeper had kept a secret diary of her observations, sensing that someday the truth would need to come to light. The corporate fraud scandal had wider implications. Several families had lost everything, including the Hendersons, the abusive foster parents Sarah had helped arrest. Their descent into cruelty was partly fueled by financial ruin, creating a tragic cycle of abuse that had touched Sarah's own life without her knowing it. Catherine's research wasn't purely altruistic either. Her dedication to finding cancer treatment stemmed from the belief that Elizabeth's death, ruled a suicide, had been connected to her diagnosis of terminal cancer. But Sarah found evidence suggesting Elizabeth had been close to exposing the firm's illegal activities when she died. William's recent erratic behavior made more sense now. Michael Brooks had resurfaced, working as a paralegal under an assumed name at a competing firm. He had been methodically gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth about Elizabeth's death and the corporate cover-up that had destroyed so many lives. The most heartbreaking discovery came from Emily's old baby box, hidden in the attic. Among the typical mementos was a sealed letter from Elizabeth to her daughter, meant to be opened on her 18th birthday. The letter detailed the love story between Elizabeth and Michael, their plans for a family, and her suspicions about William's illegal activities. Detective Parker, when quietly consulted by Sarah, confirmed that Elizabeth's death case had always troubled him. Too many questions were left unanswered, too many witnesses suddenly changed their stories. The detective had kept unofficial files, waiting for someone to finally start asking the right questions. The magnitude of the deception stunned Sarah. Every beautiful thing in the mansion, every privilege the twins enjoyed, was built on a foundation of lies and betrayal. The Anderson family's wealth and status had been purchased with others' misery, including Emily's biological parents. Catherine's guilt manifested in overprotectiveness of Emily, while her emotional distance stemmed from the daily pain of seeing her sister's features in her daughter's face. William's long hours at the office were partly driven by the need to maintain control over information that could destroy everything they had built. Most disturbing was the realization that the threats and strange occurrences weren't random harassment, they were calculated moves in a long game of revenge. Michael Brooks was methodically dismantling the carefully constructed lies, forcing the Andersons to face the consequences of their actions. Sarah found herself in an impossible position. Her duty to protect the twins conflicted with her deep-seated belief in truth and justice. The very family she had come to care for was built on the kind of deception and abuse of power she had spent her life fighting against. As she watched the twins sleeping peacefully that night, Sarah knew the truth would eventually come out. The question was no longer if, but how and when. The challenge would be protecting the innocent, especially Emily, while ensuring justice was finally served. The first concrete sign of imminent danger came on a Tuesday afternoon when Sarah discovered the mansion's security system had been professionally disabled. The usual steady green light on the control panel was dark, and a closer inspection revealed that the wires had been cut with surgical precision. Her call to the security company confirmed her worst fears: someone with intimate knowledge of the system had bypassed it. That same evening, William received a package at his office containing surveillance photos of the twins at their school playground. The images were accompanied by a note: "How does it feel to watch your loved ones, knowing you're powerless to protect them?" The threat was clear, and for the first time, Sarah saw real fear crack through William's composed exterior. Catherine's research lab reported a break-in, with only her personal files targeted. Her computer had been accessed, but instead of stealing data, the intruder had left behind old photographs of Elizabeth scattered across her desk. Each photo was marked with a red X, and the dates corresponded to significant moments in the corporate fraud case. The twins began noticing changes in their daily routine. Their regular driver was replaced without explanation, their after-school activities were cancelled, and they were no longer allowed to play in the garden. Emma, perceptive as ever, confronted Sarah about the new restrictions. "Something bad is coming, isn't it?" she asked, holding Emily's hand tightly. Mrs. Reynolds found her set of house keys missing after a routine cleaning. Within hours, identical keys appeared on her desk, arranged to spell out "soon." The message was photographed and sent to Detective Parker, who increased police patrols around the mansion but warned they couldn't maintain surveillance indefinitely without concrete evidence of a threat. Sarah's own apartment was broken into, though nothing was stolen. Instead, she found her foster care records spread across her bed, with Elizabeth's case files mixed in a clear message that someone knew about her connection to the larger story. The invasion of her personal space shook her deeply, but also strengthened her resolve to protect the twins. One morning, Emily's art teacher called, concerned about a drawing the quiet girl had made a detailed sketch of a man watching their house, his features matching Michael Brooks's old photographs. When questioned gently, Emily said the man appeared in her dreams, calling her by a different name, the name Elizabeth had chosen for her before death. The incidents escalated when the twins' private school received an anonymous email detailing Emily's true parentage, threatening to expose the scandal to all parents. The school administration, longtime allies of the Anderson family, suppressed the information but warned William that they couldn't protect his reputation indefinitely. Catherine began finding her sister's belongings in unexpected places: Elizabeth's favorite scarf draped over her laboratory chair, her old diary appearing on the kitchen counter, her college ring left on Catherine's pillow. Each item served as a reminder of her guilt and the inevitable reckoning to come. Sarah implemented emergency protocols drawing from her social work experience. She created safe words with the twins, established check-in procedures, and mapped out escape routes from every room in the mansion. She taught the girls basic self-defense appropriate for their age, disguising it as a game while emphasizing its importance. The household staff reported seeing a man matching Michael Brooks's description watching the house from various locations. He never approached directly, but made his presence known enough to maintain a constant state of tension. His psychological warfare was calculated and effective, slowly unraveling the family's sense of security. Detective Parker's unofficial investigation revealed that Michael Brooks had spent his years in hiding, methodically gathering allies, other victims of the Anderson firm's corruption, former employees with grudges, and individuals who had lost loved ones to the corporate fraud scheme. They were positioned throughout Boston, forming a network of eyes and ears monitoring the family's every move. The pressure began affecting everyone. William started sleeping in his study, a loaded gun in his desk drawer. Catherine threw herself into her research with renewed desperation, as if scientific breakthrough could somehow atone for past sins. The twins grew quieter, their secret language now filled with worried whispers and frightened glances. Sarah knew they were running out of time. The threats were escalating, the circle was tightening, and the past was rushing toward them like an approaching storm. She could protect the twins from physical danger, but the emotional tsunami that would follow, the truth's revelation that would require a different kind of strength altogether. The night of the invasion began like any other, with Sarah tucking the twins into bed after their evening routine of stories and quiet conversations. The autumn wind rattled the mansion's windows, masking the sound of the first lock being picked. It wasn't until the security system's backup power inexplicably failed that Sarah's instincts screamed danger. She was moving before the first floorboard creaked, her feet silent on the plush carpet as she made her way to the twins' room. The girls were already awake, their special bond having alerted them to the tension in the air. "Remember our safe words," Sarah whispered, helping them into the hidden closet passage they had practiced using. "Stay quiet, stay together." The intruders, 3 men in black clothes and masks, moved through the mansion with practiced precision. Their leader, taller than the others, headed directly for William's study, suggesting intimate knowledge of the house's layout. Sarah, watching from the shadows of the upper hallway, recognized the leader's movements. Michael Brooks had finally made his move. Catherine and William were caught completely off guard in the study, their latest argument about Emily's future cut short by the sudden invasion. "Hello, William." Michael's voice was cold behind his mask. "We have unfinished business to discuss." The sound of a gun being cocked echoed through the room. Sarah had already triggered the silent alarm, but she knew police response would take precious minutes. She needed to buy time, to keep the situation from escalating. Drawing on her years of crisis intervention training, she stepped into view at the study doorway. "Michael," she said calmly, The twins are safe. You don't want to add murder to Elizabeth's legacy." The mention of Elizabeth's name caused Michael to flinch visibly. "You know nothing about Elizabeth's legacy," he snarled, but Sarah could hear the pain beneath his anger. "These people destroyed her, destroyed our future, stole my daughter, and they've lived in luxury while others suffered." William attempted to reach for the gun in his desk drawer, but Michael's accomplices were faster, subduing him with brutal efficiency. Catherine stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, as she looked at the brother-in-law she had helped betray. "Michael, please," she begged. "Emily needs her family." Family? Michael's laugh was hollow. "You call this a family, built on lies, fraud, and my daughter's stolen life? No, Catherine. Tonight the truth comes out. Everyone will know what you did to Elizabeth, what your precious husband's firm did to dozens of innocent families." The situation deteriorated rapidly when Mrs. Reynolds, investigating the noise, accidentally triggered the study's emergency lights. The sudden brightness caused one of Michael's men to startle, his gun discharging into the ceiling. The sound of the shot shattered the tension into chaos. William lunged for Michael, their bodies crashing into Catherine's prized antique desk. Sarah used the distraction to slip away, knowing the twins would be terrified by the gunshot. But as she reached the hallway, she came face to face with the third intruder, his gun trained on her chest. What happened next would later seem like slow motion in Sarah's memory. She heard Emily's voice clear and frightened, calling out "Daddy" from somewhere in the house. Michael froze mid-struggle with William, the sound of his daughter's voice striking him like a physical blow. In that moment of distraction, William managed to grab the gun. But it was Sarah who took control of the situation. With moves honed through years of self-defense training, she disarmed the man threatening her, using his own momentum to slam him into the wall. The gun skittered across the floor as she delivered a precise strike to his solar plexus, leaving him gasping. "Stop!" Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. "Emily is watching. All of you think about what this violence is doing to her. Haven't enough children been traumatized by adult grudges?" Her words penetrated Michael's rage. He looked around the destroyed study, at the terror on Catherine's face, at William's bloody lip, and something in him seemed to break. I just wanted her to know the truth," he whispered. "To know she was loved, that her mother didn't abandon her." The sound of approaching sirens filtered through the broken window. Michael's accomplices looked to him for direction, but the fight had drained from him. Sarah moved carefully between the armed men, her hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "There's a better way," she said softly. "One that doesn't create more trauma, more victims. Let me help you tell Emily the truth, Michael. The right way." The standoff ended not with more violence, but with Michael Brooks slowly removing his mask, revealing a face lined with years of grief and determination. As police stormed the mansion, they found an unusual tableau: Sarah standing protective yet compassionate, Michael on his knees in surrender, and the Andersons facing the physical manifestation of their past sins. From their hidden safe room, the twins had heard everything. Emily's small voice calling out had been no accident, even at her young age. She had somehow known her presence would change the dynamic. Emma had tried to stop her, but for the first time, the quiet twin had overruled her protective sister. As Detective Parker led Michael away in handcuffs, Sarah found the girls exactly where she had hidden them, holding each other tightly. Emily's eyes were full of questions, while Emma's held a mixture of fear and fierce protectiveness. "Is it over?" Emma whispered. Sarah gathered them both in her arms, knowing that in many ways this was just the beginning. "The danger is over," she assured them, "but we have some difficult truths to talk about. Remember what I told you about being brave?" The girls nodded solemnly. "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared," Emily recited softly. "It means doing what's right even when you are scared." The aftermath of the home invasion brought a new set of challenges. As media vultures circled the Anderson mansion and threat of revenge from Michael's allies loomed. Sarah's protective instincts shifted into high gear, drawing from both her professional training and personal experience to create a fortress of safety around the twins. The first test came when reporters ambushed Emma and Emily outside their school, shoving cameras in their faces and shouting questions about their family's scandal. Sarah, anticipating such tactics, had already positioned herself nearby. She moved with calculated precision, using her body as a shield while guiding the girls to the waiting car. Head down, eyes forward, she instructed calmly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Remember what we practiced." That evening, while the Andersons dealt with police statements and legal implications, Sarah focused on maintaining the girls' sense of security. She transformed their playroom into a safe haven, implementing routines and activities that provided structure amid chaos. When Emily woke screaming from nightmares about masked men, Sarah was there with calming exercises she'd learned from her own therapy sessions. The threat escalated when Sarah discovered evidence that someone had attempted to access the twins' private school records. Working with Detective Parker, she orchestrated a complete overhaul of their security protocols. She vetted every staff member who had contact with the girls, installed panic buttons disguised as jewelry, and established code words that would immediately trigger emergency protocols. Emma, typically the strong one, began showing signs of stress. Her grades slipped, and she developed a habit of checking windows and doors obsessively. Sarah recognized the behavior from her own childhood trauma. Instead of dismissing these fears, she channeled them into productive actions, teaching Emma age-appropriate security awareness while ensuring she didn't become paranoid. A breakthrough came during a particularly difficult afternoon when Emma had a meltdown after seeing a man who resembled Michael near their dance class. Rather than rushing them home, Sarah took the girls to a quiet park. There she shared carefully selected stories from her own childhood, demonstrating how fear could be transformed into strength. Sometimes, she explained, sitting between them on a park bench, being strong means asking for help. It means telling someone when you're scared. Emily, who had barely spoken since the invasion, reached for Sarah's hand. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes about the trust they had built. Sarah's protection extended beyond physical safety. When social media began circulating cruel memes about the Anderson family scandal, she worked with the school counselor to create a support network for the twins. She monitored their online activities without being intrusive, teaching them how to handle bullying and maintain their dignity in the face of public scrutiny. The most challenging moment came when a would-be kidnapper, one of Michael's former associates seeking revenge, attempted to lure Emily away during a carefully planned outing. Sarah's instincts, honed by years of identifying predators, had noticed his suspicious behavior immediately. She maneuvered the girls into a crowded store while alerting security, her calm exterior masking her internal alarm. During the ensuing confrontation, Sarah positioned herself between the man and the twins, her voice steady as she addressed him. "I know who sent you," she said quietly, ensuring the girls couldn't hear. "And I know why. But these children are innocent. Walk away now, or what happens next will make Michael's revenge look like a picnic." The threat, delivered with absolute conviction, made the man retreat. In the quiet moments between crises, Sarah focused on healing. She introduced the twins to art therapy, watching as Emily processed her emotions through increasingly hopeful drawings. She helped Emma channel her protective instincts into positive leadership, encouraging her to start a peer support group at school for other children dealing with family challenges. But when Catherine and William were overwhelmed with legal proceedings, Sarah became the twins' emotional anchor. She attended their school events, celebrated their achievements, and provided the consistent presence they desperately needed. Her background in child psychology proved invaluable as she helped them navigate their complicated feelings about Michael, Elizabeth, and their family's history. The most poignant demonstration of Sarah's protection came during a charity gala where the Andersons made their first public appearance since the scandal broke. As whispers and pointed fingers followed the twins around the ballroom, Sarah implemented what she called Operation Lionheart, a series of subtle signals and positions that allowed the girls to feel secure while maintaining their dignity. Remember, she had told them before entering, you are not defined by other people's actions or opinions. You are brave, you are loved, and you are never alone. Throughout the evening, she remained their silent guardian, intercepting gossip with stern looks, redirecting uncomfortable conversations, and ensuring they always had an escape route if needed. Sarah's protection extended to their psychological well-being as well. She worked with therapists to develop coping strategies, created safe spaces for the twins to express their anger and confusion, and gradually helped them understand that they could be both strong and vulnerable. When Emma finally broke down one night, admitting her fear that she wasn't protecting Emily well enough, Sarah held her close. "Your job is to be a sister," she said gently, "not a guard. Let me handle the protection. You just focus on loving each other." It was a turning point in Emma's healing process, allowing her to release some of the burden she had been carrying. As weeks turned into months, Sarah's protection evolved from crisis management to long-term advocacy. She became not just their guardian, but their champion, fighting for their right to a normal childhood despite extraordinary circumstances. Her dedication went far beyond professional duty. It was a personal mission born of her own past and fueled by her deep love for these resilient young girls. The revelation of Michael Brooks's true identity unfolded like a carefully orchestrated tragedy during the police interrogation. Detective Parker sat across from the captured intruder, watching as years of carefully constructed disguise crumbled under the weight of truth. Michael wasn't just Emily's biological father or Elizabeth's former lover. He was Catherine Anderson's own stepbrother, raised alongside the twins before their parents' bitter divorce tore the family apart. "She was more than just my girlfriend," Michael's voice cracked as he recounted his history with Elizabeth. "We grew up together, shared everything. When our parents married, we fought our feelings for years, thinking it was wrong. But Elizabeth, she was my soulmate." His hands trembled as he placed a worn photograph on the table, a teenage Catherine, Elizabeth, and Michael at their parents' wedding, all smiling, unaware of the tragedy that would unfold. Catherine, watching through the two-way mirror, collapsed into a chair as long-buried memories surfaced. She remembered the summer nights when Michael and Elizabeth would sneak out together, how she had covered for them, believing she was protecting their happiness. The truth about their relationship had remained hidden from their parents, but Catherine had been their confidante, their protector. The corporate fraud case that had destroyed so many lives had a personal dimension no one had suspected. Williams' law firm had deliberately targeted Michael and Elizabeth's environmental research company, which had been close to exposing toxic waste dumping by one of the firm's biggest clients. The betrayal was intimate. William had used Catherine's inside knowledge of her sister's life to dismantle their business piece by piece. But Elizabeth wasn't just another victim, Michael revealed, his composure finally breaking. She was pregnant with Emily when she discovered the extent of William's corruption. She threatened to expose everything, not for revenge, but because people were dying from that contamination. Children were getting sick. She couldn't live with being silenced. Sarah, listening to the interrogation, felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The timing of Elizabeth's suicide, the mysterious illness that had preceded it, the rushed adoption of Emily, it all pointed to a carefully orchestrated cover-up. Catherine hadn't just adopted her niece, she had participated in erasing all traces of Emily's true parentage to protect the family's reputation. The most shocking revelation came when Michael produced Elizabeth's final letter, preserved in a waterproof case he'd carried for years. The letter detailed not just the corporate corruption, but a series of threatening encounters with William's associates. Elizabeth had known her life was in danger, had prepared for the possibility of her death by entrusting Michael with evidence that could expose everything. "I didn't come back just for revenge," Michael stated, looking directly at the mirror where he knew Catherine was watching. I came back because Elizabeth made me promise to protect Emily from becoming another pawn in the Anderson family's power games. Our daughter deserves to know her mother died fighting for what was right. Detective Parker's investigation uncovered a network of connections that implicated several prominent Boston families. The Hendersons' descent into abuse was linked to their financial ruin after investing in William's fraudulent schemes. The mysterious accidents that had plagued Elizabeth's final months were traced back to a security firm on the Anderson payroll. Catherine, confronted with the full scope of her complicity, broke down in the observation room. "I thought I was protecting Emily," she sobbed as Sarah held her. "Elizabeth made me promise to keep her safe, but I didn't know. I didn't know William was behind it all. I thought she killed herself because of the cancer diagnosis. I never imagined." The twins, though sheltered from the worst details, sensed the shift in their family's dynamic. Emily especially seemed to awaken to some genetic memory, drawing pictures of a woman who looked remarkably like Elizabeth without ever having seen her photograph. Emma became fiercely protective of her sister, understanding instinctively that bond transcended the lies that had surrounded Emily's birth. William's reaction to the revelations was perhaps the most telling. Instead of denying the accusations, he retreated into his study, emerging hours later with a thick file of documents. "I never meant for Elizabeth to die," he told Detective Parker, his arrogance finally cracking. "It was supposed to be a simple corporate takeover. Everything else the threats, the accident that was handled by others. I looked the other way." Sarah watched as the powerful Anderson family facade crumbled under the weight of truth. The mansion, once a symbol of their success, now felt like a mausoleum of secrets. Yet amid the destruction of lies, she saw hope in the way Catherine reached out to Michael, in Emily's growing understanding of her heritage, in the strength of the bonds between the twins. For Sarah, the revelations brought a deeper understanding of her own role in this family drama. She wasn't just a nanny or protector, she was a witness to both destruction and potential redemption. The skills she had developed surviving her own traumatic childhood had prepared her to help this family navigate their darkest truths. As Michael was led back to his cell, he paused to look at Sarah. "Take care of my daughter," he said softly. "Do what I couldn't help her understand, that sometimes the greatest act of love is fighting for the truth, no matter the cost." The identity of the intruder had been revealed, but the real intrusion had been the lies that had shaped 2 generations of this family. Now, in the harsh light of truth, the real work of healing could begin. The backlash began the morning after Michael's identity was revealed, when the Boston Globe ran a front-page expose detailing the Anderson family's decades of deception. The prestigious Beacon Hill community, once a bastion of support for the family, turned viciously against them with the swift brutality that only old money could execute. Margaret Whitmore, president of the Beacon Hill Parents Association, led the charge. "We cannot allow our children to associate with a family built on such deceit," she announced at an emergency meeting. Her words carried weight, resulting in immediate social isolation for the twins. Birthday party invitations were rescinded, playdates cancelled, and former friends were suddenly busy whenever Emma or Emily reached out. The accusations spread like wildfire through Boston's elite circles. William's law partners distanced themselves, launching an internal investigation while publicly expressing their shock and disappointment. Clients began pulling their business, and the firm's reputation crumbled as more victims of their fraudulent practices came forward. Catherine faced her own professional crucible. Her research funding was suspended pending an ethics investigation, with colleagues questioning whether her data had been as manipulated as her family life. The hospital board, concerned about negative publicity, placed her on indefinite administrative leave. Years of groundbreaking work was suddenly tainted by association. Sarah found herself targeted as well. Anonymous letters arrived at the mansion, suggesting she had been complicit in the deception. How could she not have known, whispered the society mothers at school pickup. A former social worker living in the house? She must have been part of the cover-up. Her background in child protection, once seen as an asset, was now viewed with suspicion. Brighton Academy, the twins' prestigious private school, struggled with the situation. While the administration publicly supported the girls, certain teachers began treating them differently. Emma's straight A's were suddenly questioned for authenticity, while Emily's art therapy sessions were cancelled due to budget constraints. The accusations took their toll on the household staff. Mrs. Reynolds, despite her 30 years of service to Boston's elite families, found herself ostracized by her peers. "They act like we're all criminals," she confided to Sarah. "As if loving those girls makes us accomplices to something awful." The media circus grew increasingly hostile. Paparazzi camped outside the mansion, shouting questions about Elizabeth's death and Emily's parentage. Local news stations ran special reports with titles like The Dark Side of Beacon Hill and Trust Fund of Lies, featuring grainy photos of the twins and speculation about their psychological well-being. Judge Sullivan, the family's neighbor and William's former mentor, faced his own dilemma. His initial defense of the Andersons led to accusations of judicial impropriety, forcing him to recuse himself from cases involving the firm. Yet he continued to speak out, arguing that the community's reaction was doing more harm than the original crimes. The children at school proved crueler than their parents. Despite Sarah's protective measures, the twins faced daily torment. Notes were slipped into their lockers calling Emily a fake Anderson and Emma a sister to a fraud. The exclusive social circles that had once embraced them now treated them as contagious. Dr. Chen, the family physician, became one of their few allies, speaking out against the community's behavior. "These are children," he reminded his wealthy patients. "They're victims, not perpetrators. Your rejection only compounds their trauma." His practice suffered for his loyalty, but he remained steadfast. The accusations extended beyond social circles into legal realms. The district attorney's office, under pressure from influential families, began investigating Catherine's adoption of Emily for potential fraud. Child Protective Services received anonymous calls questioning the twins' safety in the Anderson home, leading to mandatory welfare checks that left the girls feeling criminalized. Sarah watched as the community's rejection affected each family member differently. William retreated into his study, drowning in whiskey and regret. Catherine threw herself into compulsive cleaning, as if she could somehow scrub away the past. Emma developed a protective fierceness that bordered on aggression, while Emily withdrew further into her art, her drawings now filled with scenes of isolation and loneliness. The final blow came when the Beacon Hill Historical Society, where Catherine had served as chairperson, voted to remove the Anderson name from their donor wall. It was a symbolic gesture, but a devastating one, effectively erasing generations of family history with a single vote. Through it all, Sarah remained the family's strongest defender. She faced down reporters, confronted gossiping parents, and created a protective bubble around the twins. "You can judge us," she told one particularly vocal critic, "but remember that your perfect world is built on others' silence. At least we're facing our truths." The accusations and backlash forced the family to confront not just their past actions but their entire identity. The privilege that had once protected them now served to amplify their fall from grace. Yet in this crucible of public judgment, something unexpected began to emerge, a stronger, more authentic foundation for their relationships. As the community turned its back on them, the Anderson family turned toward each other. The masks of perfection they'd worn for so long cracked and fell away, revealing the wounded but real people beneath. In their isolation, they found a chance for genuine connection, proving that sometimes it takes losing everything to find what truly matters. The legal storm that engulfed the Anderson family began in the marble halls of Boston's courthouse, where 3 separate cases threatened to tear them apart. The first blow came when the district attorney's office filed charges against William for corporate fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy related to Elizabeth's death. The second case challenged Catherine's adoption of Emily, claiming it was obtained through fraudulent means. The third most shocking development was the arrest of Sarah herself. The accusations against Sarah seemed carefully crafted to destroy her credibility. Prosecutors alleged that she had been part of the original conspiracy, planted in the foster care system years ago to silence potential witnesses. They pointed to her perfect record of exposing abusive homes, suggesting it was too good to be true. Her connection to the Hendersons case was twisted into evidence of a larger plot. How else could she have known about the abuse the prosecutor demanded during her arraignment? Unless she was part of a network monitoring potential threats to the Anderson family's secrets. Sarah sat straight-backed in the defendant's chair, her face composed even as her world crumbled around her. Detective Parker found himself caught between loyalty and duty. His investigation had uncovered evidence that seemed to implicate Sarah phone records showing calls to William's office years before she became the twins' nanny, bank transfers from shell companies linked to the law firm, and witness statements suggesting she had been seen with Elizabeth shortly before her death. The twins were devastated by Sarah's arrest. Emma refused to speak to anyone else, while Emily retreated into complete silence, her art taking on dark, disturbing themes. Their teachers reported concerning behavior: Emma getting into fights defending Sarah's honor, Emily having panic attacks when child services workers appeared for their mandatory checks. Catherine, despite her own legal troubles, rallied to Sarah's defense. She hired Patricia Morrison, Boston's most formidable defense attorney, using the last of her accessible funds before their accounts were frozen. "Sarah saved our family," Catherine testified during the preliminary hearing. "She's the only one who saw us clearly enough to help us face our truths." The evidence against Sarah began to unravel under Morrison's skillful cross-examination. The phone records were revealed to be doctored, the bank transfers were proven to be routine foster care payments, and the witnesses were discredited. But the damage to Sarah's reputation had been done. News outlets ran sensational stories about the nanny conspirator questioning every case she had ever worked on. William, facing his own legal battles, finally broke his silence. In a dramatic courtroom confession, he revealed that Sarah had been investigated thoroughly before being hired, not because they trusted her, but because they feared her integrity. "We knew she couldn't be bought," he testified. "That's why we chose her for the twins. We wanted someone who would protect them even from us." The adoption challenge proved particularly painful. Child services workers interviewed Emily repeatedly, questioning her about her life with the Andersons, her relationship with Sarah, and her emerging understanding of her true parentage. Each interview left the sensitive child more withdrawn, more fragile. Mrs. Reynolds and the household staff were subpoenaed, forced to testify about the family dynamics they had observed. Their loyalty to the children was used against them, painted as evidence of complicity rather than compassion. The prosecution suggested they had been paid to maintain the family's secrets. Judge Sullivan, though recused from the cases, provided crucial support behind the scenes. He connected Morrison with former colleagues who had evidence of similar corporate fraud cases that had been buried by William's firm. These cases established a pattern that supported Sarah's innocence while also revealing the true scope of the firm's corruption. Michael Brooks, from his jail cell, became an unexpected ally. His detailed testimony about Elizabeth's last days proved that Sarah couldn't have been involved. She had been working at a youth center in another state during the critical period. His evidence helped clear her name, but also revealed darker truths about the power structure that had protected the Andersons for so long. The legal battles dragged on for months, draining the family's resources and energy. The twins' trust funds were frozen, their private school tuition went unpaid, and the mansion itself was at risk of foreclosure. Through it all, Sarah maintained her focus on protecting the girls, even as she fought for her own freedom. The turning point came when Emma, in an act of remarkable courage, took the stand as a character witness for Sarah. The 12-year-old's clear, unwavering testimony, about Sarah's protective care and ethical behavior moved even the most skeptical jurors. She taught us that being brave means telling the truth, Emma declared, even when it hurts. Emily's contribution came in the form of her art, dozens of drawings documenting life in the Anderson household before and after Sarah's arrival. The images told a powerful story of transformation, from isolation and fear to healing and hope. The prosecution's attempts to dismiss them as childish fantasies backfired when child psychologists testified to their therapeutic and documentary value. The legal battles reached their climax during a joint hearing that would determine both Sarah's fate and the twins' future custody arrangements. The courthouse was packed with supporters and detractors, media crews, and curious onlookers. The air was thick with tension as the judge prepared to deliver his ruling. The full truth about Emily's adoption emerged through a series of revelations that shook Boston's legal and social establishments to their core. It began when an elderly nurse, Margaret Sullivan, came forward with a deathbed confession. She had been present the night Elizabeth was brought to the private clinic, not for cancer treatment, as officially reported, but suffering from suspicious injuries. She wasn't dying from cancer, Margaret's sworn statement revealed. She was running for her life. She made me promise to protect her unborn child. The nurse had kept detailed records, hidden for years in a safety deposit box, documenting Elizabeth's final days. The records included blood tests proving Emily's paternity, handwritten notes from Elizabeth outlining the threats she'd received, and most damaging of all, security camera footage showing William Anderson entering the clinic the night Elizabeth died. Catherine's role in the adoption proved more complex than anyone had imagined. Her own private journals, submitted as evidence, revealed her tortured decision-making process. She had genuinely believed she was protecting Emily from Michael, whom William had convinced her was unstable and dangerous. The journals detailed late-night conversations with Elizabeth, promises made between sisters, and Catherine's growing suspicions about her husband's involvement. I chose to believe William's lies, Catherine testified, her voice breaking, because the truth was too horrific to face. I told myself I was honoring Elizabeth's wishes by keeping Emily safe, but I was really just protecting our family's reputation. Her testimony revealed how William had orchestrated the adoption through judges who were indebted to his firm, ensuring all records were sealed and any questions were quietly silenced. The adoption papers themselves told a damning story. Dates had been altered, signatures forged, and medical records fabricated to create a clean narrative of a private adoption. The trail of manipulation extended through multiple state agencies, revealing a systemic corruption that had allowed the Andersons to literally purchase a child's identity. Emily, now aware of her true origins, showed remarkable resilience. During a private meeting with the judge, she expressed her complicated feelings with wisdom beyond her years. "Catherine is my mom," she stated firmly. "She made mistakes, but she loves me. And Elizabeth is my mother too. She died protecting me. Can't I honor them both?" Michael's perspective added another layer to the story. His detailed account of his relationship with Elizabeth revealed their plans for their child, including letters they had written to their unborn daughter. These letters, preserved by Michael through years of exile, painted a picture of young parents full of hope and love, their dreams shattered by corporate greed and family betrayal. The hospital records from the night of Elizabeth's death were finally unsealed, revealing inconsistencies in the official suicide ruling. The autopsy report, when re-examined by independent experts, suggested foul play. Elizabeth's alleged suicide note, a cornerstone of the original investigation, was proven to be a forgery by handwriting experts. William's carefully constructed narrative began to collapse under the weight of evidence. Former employees of his firm came forward with documents showing how he had systematically destroyed Elizabeth and Michael's environmental research company. The corporate fraud that had prompted Elizabeth's initial investigation was exposed as part of a larger pattern of corruption, with profits prioritized over human lives. The most heartbreaking revelations came from Elizabeth's personal diary, discovered in a hidden compartment of her old desk. The final entries detailed her growing fear, her determination to protect her unborn child, and her desperate attempts to gather evidence against Williams' firm. "If anything happens to me," she wrote, "know that every choice I made was to protect my baby. Catherine, if you're reading this, remember your promise, love her, but never let her forget the truth of where she came from." The impact on the Anderson family was profound. Emma, learning the full story of her sister's origin, became even more protective of Emily. Their bond, tested by these revelations, emerged stronger. Emily began incorporating elements of both her birth mother and adoptive mother into her identity, finding strength in her complex heritage rather than shame. Catherine faced her own reckoning with the truth. Her role in maintaining the deception, though born of misguided love, had contributed to years of pain. Yet her genuine love for Emily, and her willingness to finally face the truth, offered a path toward redemption. She began working with Michael, sharing stories and photos of Elizabeth, ensuring Emily would know all facets of her history. The community's reaction to these revelations was mixed. Some, like Judge Sullivan, saw it as an opportunity for systemic reform in adoption processes and corporate oversight. But others, particularly those who had benefited from Williams' corrupt practices, attempted to distance themselves from the scandal. The truth about Emily's adoption became a catalyst for broader conversations about power, privilege, and the true meaning of family. Sarah's role in bringing these truths to light was finally recognized. Her instincts about the family dynamics, her protection of the twins, and her unwavering support of both Catherine and Michael's rights to be part of Emily's life were vindicated. Her experience with the foster system had given her unique insight into the complexity of family bonds, allowing her to help guide Emily through this challenging transition. Michael Brooks's story, when finally revealed in its entirety, was a tale of loss, betrayal, and a father's desperate love that spanned decades. During a lengthy deposition, he shared the full scope of his history, starting with his childhood as the son of Catherine's stepfather, a respected environmental scientist whose research had first uncovered the corporate pollution that would eventually lead to tragedy. Born into modest circumstances, Michael had worked his way through college on scholarships, developing a brilliant mind for environmental chemistry that matched his father's. It was during his graduate studies at MIT that his relationship with Elizabeth, his stepsister, deepened from childhood friendship into something more. Their shared passion for environmental justice and corporate accountability brought them together, even as their family connection threatened to tear them apart. "We knew it would cause scandal," Michael testified, his voice thick with emotion. "But Elizabeth believed some things were worth fighting for: love, truth, justice. She taught me that family isn't just about blood or legal ties. It's about choosing to stand together for what's right." Their secret relationship had flourished in the shadows of Boston's academic world, where they built their research company focused on environmental impact studies. The success of their company had attracted Williams' attention. At first, he had approached them as an ally, offering legal support for their environmental protection initiatives. Elizabeth, despite her initial reservations, had been won over by Williams' apparent dedication to corporate responsibility. Michael, however, had sensed something darker beneath the polished surface. His suspicions proved correct when their company began uncovering evidence of massive toxic dumping by one of Williams' biggest clients. The discovery had coincided with Elizabeth's pregnancy, adding urgent personal stakes to their professional crisis. "She wouldn't back down," Michael recalled. "Even when the threats started coming, Elizabeth said our baby deserved to inherit a world where truth mattered more than profit." The systematic destruction of their company had been just the beginning. Williams' firm had frozen their assets, fabricated evidence of fraudulent research, and destroyed their professional reputations. Former colleagues had been bribed or threatened into silence. Michael's own father, attempting to defend them, had died in a suspicious car accident that was quickly ruled an unfortunate tragedy. Elizabeth's pregnancy had become their vulnerability. Anonymous threats targeted their unborn child, forcing them to consider desperate measures. "We planned to disappear," Michael revealed. He had fake passports, new identities arranged, but Elizabeth insisted on one last attempt to expose the truth. She trusted Catherine, believed her sister would help once she knew everything. The night Elizabeth went to Catherine with their evidence became the turning point. Michael had waited at their predetermined meeting spot, growing increasingly anxious as hours passed with no word. When he finally learned of Elizabeth's suicide, he knew instantly it was murder. But with his reputation destroyed, his evidence discredited, and his child missing, he had been forced into hiding. The years of exile had transformed Michael. He had survived by working under assumed names, gathering evidence, and building a network of other corporate fraud victims. Every decision, every move had been calculated to bring him closer to the truth about Elizabeth's death and their child's fate. His discovery that Catherine had adopted Emily had been both a relief and a new torment. His daughter was safe, but being raised by the very people who had destroyed her parents. Most haunting were the letters he had written to Emily over the years, never sent but preserved as a record of his love and determination. "My dearest daughter." One began, "Today you would be starting kindergarten. I imagine you with your mother's curious eyes and determined spirit. I promise you'll know the truth someday. Know that you were born from love and principle, not scandal and shame." The psychological toll of his years in hiding became evident as he described watching Emily from afar, seeing glimpses of Elizabeth in her movements, her artistic talent, her quiet strength. He had documented her life through photographs taken at a distance, creating a painful archive of moments he couldn't share. The discovery that Emily had inherited Elizabeth's passion for art had both comforted and tormented him. His decision to finally confront the Andersons had been triggered by discovering William's firm was about to repeat history, burying evidence of new environmental violations that were causing childhood cancer clusters in low-income neighborhoods. "I couldn't let them destroy more families," Michael explained. "Elizabeth died trying to prevent this. I had to finish what she started, for our daughter and for all the children at risk." The most painful revelation was learning how William had manipulated Catherine, using her love for her sister and her fears about scandal to make her complicit in the cover-up. Michael's anger toward Catherine had melted into understanding as he realized she too had been a victim of William's manipulation, trapped in a web of lies that had seemed impossible to escape. Throughout his testimony, Michael maintained a dignity that moved even his strongest critics. His story resonated with themes of love, justice, and the brutal cost of standing up to corporate power. The evidence he had gathered over the years, meticulously documented and preserved, provided a devastating picture of systemic corruption that extended far beyond the Anderson family. The past Sarah had worked so hard to overcome resurfaced with devastating force when Frank Davidson, her former abusive foster father, was released from prison. His appearance at the courthouse during one of the Anderson family's hearings sent shockwaves through Sarah's carefully constructed world. Frank had aged, but his eyes still held the same calculating cruelty that had haunted her childhood nightmares. "Well, well, little Sarah Miller," he drawled, deliberately blocking her path as she escorted the twins to their car. "Still playing protector to rich kids." His presence triggered memories. Sarah had spent years in therapy processing the basement punishments, the psychological manipulation, the constant fear that had defined her adolescence. The media, already fascinated by the Anderson scandal, latched onto this new development with predatory enthusiasm. Frank sold his story to the highest bidder, painting Sarah as a troubled, manipulative child who had fabricated abuse allegations to gain attention. His accusations cast doubt on her credibility just when the Andersons needed her testimony most. "She was always good at making people believe her lies," Frank told reporters, his wife Marie nodding sympathetically beside him. "She destroyed our family with her false accusations, and now she's doing the same to the Andersons." Their well-rehearsed performance of victimhood found a receptive audience among those already skeptical of Sarah's role in the family drama. Detective Parker, who had worked Sarah's original abuse case, watched with growing concern as Frank methodically undermined her reputation. Old case files mysteriously disappeared from police archives, and witnesses who had corroborated Sarah's testimony years ago suddenly became unavailable or changed their stories. The twins, witnessing Sarah's struggle, demonstrated remarkable loyalty. Emma confronted a reporter who ambushed them after school, defending Sarah with fierce determination. "You don't know her," the young girl declared. "She saves people. She saved us. She's the bravest person I know." Emily expressed her support through art, creating a powerful series of drawings that captured Sarah's protective presence in their lives. Catherine, despite her own legal troubles, rallied to Sarah's defense. She hired private investigators to re-examine the Davidson case, uncovering a pattern of abuse that extended beyond Sarah to other foster children who had passed through their home. These survivors, now adults, began coming forward with their own stories, validating Sarah's original accusations. The psychological toll on Sarah became evident in subtle ways: a slight tremor in her hands when startled, sleepless nights spent checking the mansion's security systems, moments of dissociation during particularly stressful confrontations. Yet she refused to step away from her duties, drawing strength from the very children she protected. Elizabeth Bennet's death had left Sarah a collection of diaries documenting her observations of the young Sarah's recovery. These journals, when presented in court, provided powerful testimony to the lasting impact of the Davidsons' abuse and Sarah's remarkable journey toward healing. Elizabeth's detailed accounts of Sarah's nightmares, panic attacks, and gradual emergence from trauma painted a picture that directly contradicted Frank's allegations. Mrs. Reynolds emerged as an unexpected ally, sharing her own observations of Frank's suspicious behavior around the mansion. She had noticed him watching the property, taking photos, gathering information about the family's routines. Her testimony helped secure a restraining order, providing some measure of protection for Sarah and the twins. The breaking point came when Frank attempted to approach Emily after school, claiming he wanted to warn her about Sarah. Michael Brooks, watching from his jail cell as the situation unfolded through news reports, provided crucial information linking Frank to William's firm. Financial records showed payments from shell companies, suggesting Frank's reappearance was part of a coordinated attempt to discredit Sarah. Sarah's own trauma recovery became intertwined with her fight to protect the twins. In therapy sessions, which she now allowed the older girls to occasionally attend, she demonstrated how facing one's past could become a source of strength rather than shame. Her vulnerability in these moments taught the twins powerful lessons about resilience and the courage to confront difficult truths. Judge Sullivan, though officially recused from the cases, made a public statement about Sarah's character that carried significant weight in Boston's legal community. He shared stories of her work with troubled youth, her dedication to reform in the foster care system, and her unwavering commitment to protecting vulnerable children. The final confrontation with her past came when Marie Davidson, Frank's wife, suffered a crisis of conscience. Years of carrying guilt had taken their toll, and she finally broke her silence. Her detailed confession confirmed Sarah's original testimony and exposed Frank's recent actions as part of a larger conspiracy to silence witnesses in the Anderson case. Through it all, Sarah maintained her focus on the twins' well-being, transforming her personal battle into lessons about standing up to injustice. She showed them that survival wasn't just about enduring pain, but about using it to fuel positive change. Her past, rather than destroying her credibility, ultimately reinforced the authenticity of her commitment to protecting children from abuse in all its forms. The kidnapping attempt occurred on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon during the twins' piano lesson. Sarah had noticed a black SUV circling the neighborhood but dismissed it as another paparazzi vehicle. It wasn't until she saw Frank Davidson behind the wheel with two unknown men in dark suits that her instinct screamed danger. The attack was precisely coordinated. As Emily stepped out of the music school, one man approached with a believable story about being sent by Catherine to pick up the girls. Emma, sensing the deception, grabbed her sister's hand and started backing away. The second man emerged from behind, reaching for Emily with practiced efficiency. Sarah's reaction was instantaneous. Years of self-defense training and protective instincts took over. She pushed both girls behind her, her voice calm but commanding, run to Mrs. Chen's office. Now, the twins bolted, their rehearsed emergency protocols kicking in as Sarah faced their attackers. But the first blow caught Sarah in the ribs, but she maintained her stance, buying precious seconds for the twins to escape. She fought with the desperation of someone who understood exactly what was at stake. These weren't just hired thugs, they were part of William's attempt to regain control through fear. Frank Davidson emerged from the SUV, his familiar smirk twisting into rage as he saw his plan unraveling. "You always were trouble, Sarah," he snarled, reaching into his jacket. "But this time, you're interfering with something bigger than your little crusade." The chase erupted through Boston's historic streets. Sarah pursued the men who had managed to grab Emily, while Emma ran ahead to alert Detective Parker. The kidnappers had planned their route carefully, avoiding the main roads where CCTV cameras might track them. Sarah's knowledge of the city's backstreets, gained from years of social work, proved crucial. She took shortcuts through alleys and side passages, keeping the black SUV in sight while coordinating with police through her phone. Her voice remained steady as she relayed directions, even as her lungs burned from the exertion. Inside the SUV, Emily was demonstrating her own kind of courage. She remembered Sarah's lessons about staying calm and observant during a crisis. The young girl noted landmarks, street names, and most importantly, caught a glimpse of documents on the front seat papers bearing Williams' law firm's letterhead. The pursuit wound through increasingly narrow streets until the SUV made a critical error, turning into a dead-end alley. Sarah arrived moments before the police, positioning herself between the vehicle and the only escape route. Frank and his accomplices found themselves trapped. "Let her go," Sarah demanded, her voice carrying an authority that made even Frank pause. "You really think William's money is worth destroying another child's life?" The mention of William's name caused visible tension among the kidnappers, confirming Sarah's suspicions about who had orchestrated this attempt. Detective Parker's arrival with backup transformed the standoff. Emily, seizing a moment of confusion, employed the self-defense move Sarah had taught her, breaking free from her captor's grip and running to Sarah's arms. The reunion was brief but intense, both of them trembling with adrenaline and relief. The aftermath revealed the full scope of William's desperate plan. The kidnappers, when questioned, exposed a scheme to take Emily out of the country, using her as leverage to force Catherine and Michael to drop their testimonies. Frank's involvement had been a calculated attempt to discredit Sarah while simultaneously removing the twins from her protection. Emma's role in thwarting the kidnapping proved crucial. She had not only alerted authorities but had also managed to photograph the SUV's license plate and Frank's accomplices. Her quick thinking provided vital evidence linking the attempt directly to William's associates. Sarah's injuries from the fight were minor, but the emotional impact on the family was profound. The twins refused to leave her side for days afterward, their bond strengthened by the shared trauma and triumph. Catherine, horrified by William's actions, finally filed for divorce and full custody. The failed kidnapping became a turning point in the legal proceedings. Public sympathy, which had been divided, shifted decisively in favor of Catherine and the children. Sarah's protective actions, captured partially on nearby security cameras, transformed her public image from suspicious nanny to heroic guardian. Judge Sullivan, upon reviewing the evidence of William's involvement in the kidnapping attempt, issued an immediate order freezing his remaining assets and revoking all access to the children. The attempted abduction had revealed the true depths of his desperation and moral corruption. The episode also validated Sarah's insistence on emergency protocols and self-defense training for the twins. What had seemed like excessive caution proved to be vital preparation. Emily's ability to remain calm and observant during her ordeal, and Emma's quick response to the crisis, demonstrated the practical value of Sarah's protective strategies. Elizabeth Bennet's reappearance at the courthouse stunned everyone into silence. The elderly teacher who had saved Sarah from the foster care system, presumed dead from cancer years ago, walked steadily down the central aisle during William's bail hearing. Her silver hair was shorter, her face more lined, but her eyes held the same unwavering determination that Sarah remembered. "I apologize for my deception," Elizabeth announced to the packed courtroom, "but my death was necessary to protect evidence that would expose decades of corruption." She approached the judge's bench, pulling out a worn leather briefcase containing meticulously documented records of William's firm's illegal activities, including their connection to Sarah's former foster parents, the Davidsons. Sarah stood frozen, emotions warring across her face. Her mentor, the woman who had taught her everything about love, strength, and protection, had allowed her to grieve for years. Yet the tactical part of her mind understood the necessity. Elizabeth had been gathering evidence, working in the shadows to bring down the system that had hurt so many children. The reunion between Sarah and Elizabeth took place in Judge Sullivan's chambers, away from prying eyes. "I wanted to tell you so many times," Elizabeth explained, holding Sarah's trembling hands. "But you needed to become your own person, to find your strength without depending on me. And you have, my dear. You've exceeded every hope I had for you." Elizabeth's evidence proved transformative to the case. She had spent years teaching at schools across the country, tracking children who had been victims of the corrupt foster care system that William's firm had helped create. Her records showed a pattern of vulnerable children being placed with abusive foster parents who were being paid to keep silent about corporate environmental violations. The twins, especially Emily, formed an immediate bond with Elizabeth. They recognized in her the same protective strength they saw in Sarah. Elizabeth's stories about young Sarah, her struggles and triumphs, helped the girls understand their guardian even better. "She was like you," Elizabeth told them, fierce in protecting others even when she was hurting herself. Catherine found unexpected support in Elizabeth as well. The older woman's experience in helping trauma survivors provided valuable guidance as Catherine worked to rebuild her relationship with Emily and process her own role in the family's problems. Elizabeth's forgiveness of Sarah's past accusers became a model for how Catherine could begin to forgive herself. The most dramatic moment came when Elizabeth confronted Frank Davidson in court. Her testimony revealed how William's firm had systematically placed children with the Davidsons, using Frank's reputation for breaking difficult children to silence potential witnesses. Her evidence included recordings, documents, and testimonies from other survivors. Sarah's understanding of her own past shifted with Elizabeth's revelations. The abuse she had suffered wasn't random, it had been part of a larger system of corruption. This knowledge, while painful, helped her finally contextualize her experiences and strengthen her resolve to protect the twins from similar manipulation. Elizabeth's presence transformed the legal proceedings. Her reputation as an educated, respected teacher who had dedicated her life to children's welfare carried significant weight with the jury. Her methodical presentation of evidence, gathered over years of careful investigation, was impossible to dismiss as mere conspiracy. The press dubbed Elizabeth the ghost witness, running stories about her years undercover gathering evidence. While she avoided media attention, focusing instead on supporting Sarah and the twins, her return became a symbol of hope for other victims of the corrupt system. Former foster children began coming forward with their own stories, creating a wave of testimonies that supported her evidence. During quiet moments at the mansion, Elizabeth shared with Sarah the full story of her disappearance. She had discovered her cancer diagnosis was a fabrication, part of William's firm's attempt to discredit her investigation into their activities. Rather than confront them directly, she had used their deception to disappear, using her presumed death as cover to dig deeper into their operations. "The hardest part," Elizabeth confessed one evening, "was watching you grieve. But I knew you would understand someday that sometimes protecting those we love means making impossible choices." Her words helped Sarah reconcile her complicated feelings about the deception, recognizing the same difficult decisions she now faced in protecting the twins. Elizabeth's return also provided crucial validation for Sarah's unconventional methods of protecting the twins. Her emphasis on teaching children to be both strong and emotionally aware, to understand the complexities of trust and protection, had come directly from Elizabeth's influence. Now, seeing her mentor work with the twins, Sarah witnessed the generational passing of these vital lessons. The final trial began on a crisp autumn morning, with the historic Boston courthouse packed to capacity. William Anderson sat at the defense table, his once immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. The prosecution's case, led by District Attorney Rebecca Martinez, promised to expose decades of corruption that went far beyond the Anderson family. The first bombshell dropped when Catherine took the stand. She trembled visibly but spoke with clear determination. "I wasn't just complicit in covering up Emily's adoption," she testified. "I knew about the environmental studies that showed increased cancer rates in communities where William's clients dumped toxic waste. I chose our wealth over those children's lives." Elizabeth Bennet's testimony followed, methodically connecting William's firm to a network of corrupt foster care placements. She revealed how children who showed signs of toxic exposure were deliberately placed with abusive foster parents like the Davidsons, ensuring their symptoms would be attributed to trauma rather than corporate negligence. The courtroom fell silent when Emily, now understanding the full scope of her history, requested to address the judge. Despite Catherine's protective objections, Judge Sullivan allowed it. The young girl stood straight, her voice clear and steady. "I have 3 parents," she declared. "Catherine, who chose to love me; Michael, who never stopped fighting for justice; and Elizabeth, my birth mother, who died protecting the truth. William Anderson isn't my family. He's the man who destroyed my family." Sarah's testimony became the emotional centerpiece of the trial. She described the systematic abuse she'd witnessed in foster homes connected to William's firm, the pattern of silencing vulnerable children, and her own journey from victim to protector. When William's attorney attempted to discredit her by bringing up her past, Sarah remained unshaken. "Yes, I survived abuse," she stated firmly. "That's exactly why I can recognize the system that enables it." The most dramatic moment came when Frank Davidson, believing he had immunity, arrogantly detailed his role in silencing foster children. He didn't realize that Elizabeth Bennet had secretly recorded their previous conversations, which the prosecution played in court. His face turned ashen as his own voice revealed the full extent of his cooperation with William's firm. Detective Parker presented evidence of the recent kidnapping attempt, including surveillance footage showing William meeting with Frank Davidson days before the incident. The detective's testimony revealed a complex conspiracy. William had orchestrated the attempt not just to silence Emily, but to discredit Sarah by having her former abuser re-enter her life. Michael Brooks, testifying from custody, provided the missing link between the environmental crimes and the foster care system. His and Elizabeth's research had originally uncovered how William's firm targeted low-income communities for toxic dumping, then used the foster care system to cover up the resulting health issues. Mrs. Reynolds surprised everyone by revealing she had kept a detailed diary throughout her years of service to the Andersons. Her matter-of-fact descriptions of late-night document shredding, suspicious phone calls, and William's increasingly erratic behavior provided compelling corroboration for the prosecution's timeline. The defense attempted to paint William as a devoted family man led astray by corporate pressures. This strategy backfired spectacularly when Emma, in an unplanned moment, stood up in court. "A real father protects his family," she announced clearly. "He doesn't try to kidnap them or hurt the people who care about them." The jury appeared visibly moved by testimony from other foster care survivors who had been placed in abusive homes to silence their families' environmental damage claims. Their stories created a damning pattern that directly implicated Williams' firm in decades of systematic exploitation of vulnerable children. Judge Sullivan's courtroom became a forum for long-buried truths. Former employees of Williams' firm came forward with evidence they'd hidden out of fear. Community members from affected neighborhoods shared stories of mysterious illnesses and threatened families. Each testimony added another layer to the prosecution's case. The final revelation came from an unexpected source, Williams' own father, Richard Anderson, who had been living in self-imposed exile. His testimony revealed that he had resigned from the firm decades ago after discovering the toxic dumping scheme, and Williams' subsequent betrayal of his own father had been his first step toward corruption. As the trial neared its conclusion, the atmosphere in the courtroom was charged with the weight of exposed truths and approaching justice. The impact extended beyond the Anderson family, promising to reshape Boston's legal and social services systems. Sarah, sitting with the twins and Elizabeth Bennet, knew that regardless of the verdict, the real victory was in breaking the cycle of silence that had protected the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. The verdict's aftermath brought a different kind of crisis as the Anderson family struggled to redefine itself. Catherine, despite her testimony against William, found herself torn between loyalty to her disgraced husband and her commitment to rebuilding trust with her daughters. The strain showed in sleepless nights and moments of paralyzed indecision. Emily's relationship with Catherine reached a critical point when she discovered more details about Elizabeth's final days. Did you know she demanded one evening, her voice breaking? Did you know she came to you for help that night? Catherine's silence was answer enough, sending Emily running to her room, where she refused to speak to anyone except Sarah for days. Emma, always the protector, found herself caught between her sister's pain and her mother's remorse. The pressure of being everyone's emotional support began to show. Her grades dropped, she snapped at teachers, and during one particularly difficult therapy session, she finally broke down. "I'm tired of being strong," she sobbed in Sarah's arms. "I'm tired of pretending everything's okay." The revelation of William's crimes created unexpected rifts within the extended family. Some relatives, led by William's sister Victoria, accused Catherine of betraying family loyalty for public sympathy. Others demanded she surrender her inheritance rights, claiming she had forfeited her claim to the Anderson fortune by testifying against William. Sarah watched as the family's bonds stretched dangerously thin. Catherine's attempts to maintain connections with William's family for the girls' sake met with cold rejection. Holiday invitations were rescinded, family heirlooms were demanded back, and generations of social connections were severed with cruel efficiency. Michael's presence added another layer of complexity. Though legally cleared, his relationship with Emily remained tentative, filled with awkward pauses and uncertain expectations. Catherine struggled with jealousy during Emily's visits with him, while Emma felt increasingly left out of this new dynamic. The mansion itself became a source of tension. Each room held memories that were now tainted by revelation of William's crimes. The twins began avoiding certain spaces: William's study, the formal dining room where so many family decisions had been made, the garden where they had once played under the illusion of being a perfect family. Financial pressures mounted as legal fees drained the family's accessible resources. Catherine faced difficult decisions about selling family assets, including the summer house where the twins had spent their happiest moments. Each potential sacrifice sparked fresh arguments about priorities and values. Mrs. Reynolds, caught between loyalty to the family and her own moral compass, struggled with her role in the changing household. Her attempt to maintain normalcy through familiar routines sometimes highlighted how abnormal their situation had become. One morning, setting the breakfast table for 4 instead of 5, she burst into tears. The community's reaction continued to test family solidarity. At school, Emma faced taunts about her criminal father, while Emily endured whispers about being the replacement child. Their different responses, Emma's anger versus Emily's withdrawal, created new challenges in their once unshakable bond. Catherine's parents, long divorced but united in their concern, arrived uninvited to help manage the situation. Their presence, though well-intentioned, added new stress as they criticized Catherine's handling of the crisis and questioned her decision to keep Sarah involved in family decisions. The breaking point came during a failed attempt at a family dinner. Catherine had invited Michael, hoping to demonstrate her commitment to co-parenting. The evening devolved into tense silence, broken by Emily's sudden declaration that she wanted to live with her birth father. Emma's hurt response, Catherine's visible devastation, and Michael's uncomfortable silence created a tableau of family bonds stretched to their limits. Sarah found herself navigating increasingly complex emotional territories. Her role as protector now extended to preserving the family's fundamental connections while allowing space for necessary change and healing. She understood that some bonds needed to break to be rebuilt stronger, while others needed gentle reinforcement. The crisis forced each family member to confront their true priorities. Catherine had to choose between maintaining social appearances and supporting her daughter's emotional needs. Emma struggled with allowing herself to be vulnerable rather than always strong. Emily faced the challenge of integrating her complex heritage without rejecting either set of parents. Through it all, Sarah maintained her belief that family bonds, though tested, could emerge stronger through adversity. She worked with each family member individually, helping them find ways to communicate their fears and hopes. Her own experience of building chosen family became a model for how the Andersons might redefine their relationships. William Anderson's death came not with violence or drama, but in the quiet hours of a Sunday morning in his prison cell. The official report cited a heart attack, but those who knew him recognized it as the final surrender of a man who had lost everything that once defined him. The news reached the mansion during breakfast, delivered by Detective Parker with gentle professionalism. Catherine's reaction surprised everyone. She excused herself calmly from the table, walked to William's study, and systematically began removing every trace of him: photographs, awards, the expensive fountain pens he had collected. Her methodical dismantling of his presence was more heartbreaking than any display of grief could have been. The twins responded differently to the news. Emma, who had been struggling to reconcile her memories of a loving father with the reality of his crimes, finally allowed herself to cry for the dad she had lost long before his death. Emily, however, remained silent, focusing intently on a drawing that depicted a family tree with complex, intertwining branches. Sarah found herself managing a unique form of grief, not for William himself, but for the impact his death had on the family's healing process. Questions that needed answers would remain forever unasked. Reconciliations that might have happened became impossible. The chance for him to explain, to perhaps show remorse, was gone. Mrs. Reynolds, who had served the family for decades, took William's death particularly hard. She had known him since his early days as an idealistic young lawyer, had watched his gradual corruption, and now mourned not just his death but the loss of what he could have been. She spent the day polishing already gleaming silverware, her tears falling silently on family heirlooms. The funeral arrangements became a source of fresh conflict. William's family insisted on a grand service befitting an Anderson, while Catherine wanted a private ceremony that wouldn't force the twins to face public scrutiny. The compromise, a small family-only service, satisfied no one but protected the children. Michael Brooks, watching from a respectful distance, struggled with his own complex emotions. His enemy was gone, but so was the possibility of ever confronting William about Elizabeth's death. He attended the funeral at Emily's request, standing at the back of the church, his presence both a comfort and a reminder of all that had been lost. During the service, Emma stood to deliver a eulogy that captured the family's complicated grief. "I'm sad today," she said, her young voice steady, "Not just because my father died, but because he stopped being my father long before that. I'm sad for the person he could have been, the family we could have been." The press tried to turn William's death into a sensational story, suggesting everything from suicide to murder. Sarah worked with Detective Parker to protect the family from this fresh intrusion, creating a buffer that allowed them to process their loss privately. The most poignant moment came when Emily discovered a letter William had written to her before his death. His final words expressed not justification or excuses, but a simple recognition of his failures and hope that she would learn from them. "Choose love over power," he had written, "something I never had the courage to do." In the days following the funeral, the mansion seemed to exhale, as if releasing a long-held breath. Catherine began sleeping in her own room again, rather than the guest suite she had occupied since his arrest. The twins slowly reclaimed spaces that had been tacitly marked as father's territory, small changes that signaled both an ending and a beginning. Sarah observed these shifts with careful attention, understanding that this death marked a crucial transition for the family. The complex legacy of William Anderson, father, criminal, fallen patriarch, would need to be processed and integrated into their ongoing story of healing and redemption. Sarah's world crumbled one piece at a time. First came the anonymous letter to the school board questioning her fitness to be around children, citing her traumatic past as a liability. Then followed a series of coordinated complaints to Child Protective Services, each carefully crafted to trigger mandatory investigations. The final blow struck when Judge Matthews, temporarily replacing the recused Judge Sullivan, issued an emergency order removing her from the Anderson household pending a full investigation. The judge cited concerns about psychological stability and potential trauma transference, using Sarah's own history of abuse against her. The scene of her departure from the mansion haunted everyone present. Emma, typically so strong, collapsed in hysterics, while Emily retreated into complete silence. Catherine stood helpless, torn between supporting Sarah and complying with the court order. Mrs. Reynolds wept openly as she packed Sarah's belongings, her hands shaking with anger and grief. "I'll fight this," Sarah promised the twins as she prepared to leave. "Remember everything I taught you. Stay strong, stay together," but her voice cracked on the last words, betraying her own fear and uncertainty. For the first time since joining the family, she felt powerless to protect them. Forced to return to her small apartment, Sarah faced her own demons. Nightmares about the Davidsons returned with devastating force. She found herself jumping at shadows, checking locks repeatedly, falling back into survival patterns she thought she'd overcome. The isolation threatened to overwhelm her carefully constructed strength. Detective Parker, visiting with case updates, found her surrounded by case files and legal documents, desperately searching for a way to fight back. "You're not alone in this," he reminded her, but they both knew the system that had failed her as a child was failing her again, this time using her past trauma as a weapon. The twins attempted to maintain contact through letters, which became increasingly desperate. Emma wrote about nightmares and anger, while Emily's drawings grew darker, filled with shadows and separated figures. Their messages painted a picture of a family unraveling without its emotional anchor. Catherine tried to hire the best lawyers to fight the order, but found herself blocked at every turn. Mysterious pressure on law firms, sudden conflicts of interest, and bureaucratic delays suggested an organized effort to keep Sarah away from the family. Elizabeth Bennet, though still recovering her own strength, attempted to intervene on Sarah's behalf. Her testimony about Sarah's recovery and growth should have carried significant weight, but the system seemed determined to view Sarah through the lens of her trauma, rather than her triumph. The media, always hungry for scandal, painted Sarah as a damaged woman unhealthily attached to her charges. Articles questioned her motivations, suggesting she was recreating her own trauma through the twins. Each headline felt like a physical blow, undermining years of healing and professional accomplishment. In her darkest moments, Sarah questioned everything. Had she been wrong to think she could overcome her past? Had her desire to protect the twins been driven by her own unresolved issues? The doubts crept in like poison, threatening to undo years of therapeutic progress. The most painful aspect was knowing the twins were suffering without her. Reports from Mrs. Reynolds described Emma's increasing behavioral problems at school and Emily's retreat into almost complete silence. Their weekly therapy sessions, once a source of healing, had become exercises in contained grief. Michael Brooks, watching from prison as the family he'd fought to expose now faced a different kind of destruction, sent Sarah a letter. They're using the same playbook he wrote. Discredit the witness, attack their stability, separate them from their support system. Don't let them win this time. Sarah spent her nights researching, building a case for her return, documenting every interaction and decision she'd made with the twins. During the day, she forced herself to continue her professional development, knowing that any sign of instability would be used against her. The temporary defeat felt permanent, each day of separation adding to the weight of loss. But in her heart, Sarah held on to the lessons she'd learned from Elizabeth Bennet. Sometimes the greatest victories come after the darkest moments, and true strength lies in refusing to accept defeat as final. The community split over Sarah's removal from the Anderson household created deep, painful rifts in Boston's elite social circles. The controversy extended beyond simple gossip, dividing longtime friends, business associates, and even families. At the heart of the debate was a fundamental question: could someone with Sarah's traumatic past be trusted to guide children through their own trauma? Margaret Whitmore, still wielding considerable influence despite the Anderson scandal, led the opposition. She organized closed-door meetings of the Parents Association, framing Sarah's presence as a threat to all their children. If we allow someone with a background unrestricted access to vulnerable children, she argued, what precedent are we setting? On the other side, Dr. Chen became Sarah's vocal defender, risking his own practice by speaking out. I've watched Sarah help those girls heal, he testified at a school board meeting. To punish her for surviving abuse is to tell every trauma survivor they're permanently damaged. His impassioned speech cost him several wealthy patients, but inspired others to step forward. The division spread to Brighton Academy, where teachers found themselves taking sides. Some supported the twins openly, creating safe spaces for them during lunch and free periods. Others, influenced by worried parents, began treating them with careful distance, as if trauma might be contagious. Mrs. Reynolds organized the household staff across several elite families to protest Sarah's removal. Their unified action sent shockwaves through Beacon Hill. Never before had the usually invisible domestic workers taken such a public stance. Several lost their positions, but their solidarity cracked the facade of community consensus. Judge Sullivan, though officially recused, faced professional consequences for his previous support of Sarah. Anonymous complaints about his judgment began circulating, and invitations to key social events mysteriously dried up. His wife found herself excluded from charity committees she had chaired for years. The local church, traditionally neutral in community disputes, became another battleground. When Reverend Thompson delivered a sermon about redemption and second chances, clearly referencing Sarah's situation, half his congregation walked out. The following Sunday, attendance was split between his church and a newly popular congregation across town. Detective Parker's investigation into the coordinated complaints against Sarah revealed uncomfortable truths about community power structures. Many who signed the complaints admitted doing so under pressure, fearing social and economic retaliation if they didn't comply with Whitmore's campaign. The media seized upon the controversy, with local papers taking opposing stances. The conservative Boston Herald painted Sarah as a dangerous influence, while the more progressive Globe ran a series on successful trauma survivors working in childcare. Each article deepened the community's polarization. At the private clubs and social gatherings, the topic became unavoidable. Longtime friends found themselves in heated arguments over dinner, debating nature versus nurture, trauma and recovery, privilege and prejudice. Several prominent families stopped speaking entirely, their children caught in the middle of adult disputes. Catherine faced increasing isolation as former friends chose sides. Even those who privately supported her felt pressured to maintain social distances. Charity boards she had served on for years suddenly had no openings for her, and regular lunch invitations ceased. The twins watched their mother's social circle shrink with a mixture of anger and guilt. The controversy spread to professional circles, affecting the entire childcare industry in Boston's wealthy neighborhoods. Agencies began requiring extensive psychological evaluations for all caregivers, while parents demanded detailed background checks going back generations. The resulting shortage of qualified staff created new tensions. Emma and Emily's classmates found themselves forbidden from visiting the Anderson mansion, their parents citing concerns about environmental influences. Birthday party invitations became politically charged decisions, with attendance marking clear allegiance in the ongoing dispute. The community's fractures revealed deeper biases about class, trauma, and redemption. Those who had known poverty or hardship, even if they'd since achieved wealth, tended to support Sarah. Old money families with their carefully curated histories largely opposed her. These alignments exposed uncomfortable truths about social mobility and acceptance in their exclusive world. The discovery began with an old photograph found in Elizabeth Bennet's archives, a yellowed image of a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to both Catherine and Sarah. Elizabeth's meticulous notes revealed a stunning truth: Sarah's biological mother was Catherine and Elizabeth's cousin, Claire Anderson, who had disappeared from family records decades ago. Detective Parker's investigation uncovered the painful history. Claire Anderson, the black sheep of the family, had been erased from Anderson family history after becoming pregnant as a teenager. William's father, then head of the family, had arranged for her disappearance, using the same network of corrupt officials that would later serve his son's illegal activities. The connection explained why William had been so determined to keep Sarah away from the family. He had recognized her resemblance to Claire but kept this knowledge secret, fearing it would expose decades of family corruption. His own involvement in maintaining Claire's exile had been one of his first acts of moral compromise. Catherine, confronted with this revelation, remembered snippets of conversation from her childhood about a cousin who had gone away to school. The family's deliberate erasure of Claire had been so complete that even her closest relatives had accepted the carefully constructed lie. Sarah's discovery of her Anderson blood created complex emotions. The family that had once cast out her mother had, through a twist of fate, become her chosen family through the twins. The irony of her fight to protect the Anderson children, when her own mother had been abandoned by the Andersons, was not lost on her. Elizabeth Bennet's role gained new significance. She revealed that she had known of Sarah's connection to the Andersons from the beginning, having been Claire's confidante before her disappearance. Her choice to become Sarah's foster mother had been a deliberate act of protection, ensuring that at least one Anderson child would be raised with love rather than obligation. The twins' reaction to discovering Sarah was their cousin reflected their different personalities. Emma immediately embraced it as validation of their connection, declaring that blood explained why they had always felt like family. Emily, more contemplative, recognized it as proof that family bonds transcend social expectations and legal definitions. Mrs. Reynolds added another piece to the puzzle, producing a series of letters Claire had written to the household staff over the years, trying to maintain some connection to her family. These letters painted a picture of a young woman forced to choose between her child and her family's reputation, who had chosen her daughter at great personal cost. The revelation reached beyond personal relationships to the legal realm. As a blood relative, Sarah had standing to challenge certain family trust provisions. More importantly, her connection to the family provided a strong counter to those who had questioned her right to be involved in the twins' lives. Michael Brooks, learning of the connection, saw it as further evidence of the Anderson family's pattern of sacrificing their own to maintain power and position. His own relationship with Elizabeth, once considered scandalous, paralleled Claire's story in ways that helped him understand Sarah's fierce dedication to protecting children from familial abuse. Catherine's parents, when confronted with the truth about Claire, reacted with shame and regret. Their generation's complicity in erasing a young mother and child from family history reflected the same moral compromises that had enabled William's later crimes. The discovery forced the extended Anderson family to confront their history of hiding inconvenient truths. Each revelation about Claire's story exposed how the family's obsession with appearance and position had created a legacy of hidden pain and separated children. Sarah found herself reading and rereading her mother's letters, discovering echoes of her own strength in Claire's words. The young woman who had chosen her child over family privilege had passed down a legacy of moral courage that Sarah had unknowingly inherited and exemplified. As the implications of this family connection spread through Boston's social circles, the narrative about Sarah began to shift. She was no longer just a former foster child who had risen above her circumstances. She was an Anderson by blood, reclaiming her place in the family that had once rejected her mother. The true architect of the Anderson family's destruction emerged from an unexpected source. Margaret Whitmore, the seemingly righteous president of the Parents Association, was revealed as the puppet master who had orchestrated not only Sarah's removal but decades of corruption within Boston's elite circles. Detective Parker's breakthrough came through financial records Elizabeth Bennet had gathered. They showed Whitmore had been William's silent partner for years, using her social position to identify vulnerable families for the firm's predatory schemes. Her campaign against Sarah wasn't about protecting children, it was about preventing exposure of her own crimes. The evidence painted a damning picture. Whitmore had been the one who first identified Elizabeth's environmental research as a threat, who suggested using the foster care system to silence witnesses, and who had personally selected the Davidsons as appropriate foster parents for troublesome children. Her social leadership position had provided perfect cover for identifying and exploiting vulnerable families. Sarah's own placement with the Davidsons, it turned out, had been Whitmore's decision. She had recognized Sarah's potential connection to the Andersons and deliberately placed her in an abusive home, hoping to break her spirit before she could discover her true identity. The revelation of this calculated cruelty stunned even those who had witnessed Whitmore's other manipulations. Catherine remembered countless charity committee meetings where Whitmore had subtly gathered information about families in crisis, information that later served William's firm's predatory practices. Her careful cultivation of social power had created a network of unwitting informants among Boston's elite. The most shocking discovery was Whitmore's connection to Claire Anderson's exile. She had been the one to suggest sending the pregnant teenager away, not out of family concern, but to establish her pattern of handling inconvenient situations for the Andersons. This first success had launched her career as a social fixer for Boston's wealthy families. Mrs. Reynolds provided crucial testimony about conversations she had overheard over the years. Whitmore's visits to the mansion had often coincided with major family decisions, her seemingly casual suggestions carrying hidden weight. The housekeeper's detailed records of these visits helped establish the timeline of manipulation. Michael Brooks, reviewing the evidence from prison, recognized Whitmore's hand in Elizabeth's death. Her social events had provided opportunities for surveillance, her charity work had created opportunities for threats, and her community standing had helped dismiss any suspicions about the supposed suicide. The twins' own experiences added another layer to the exposure. Emma recalled how Whitmore had always asked particularly pointed questions about their family life, while Emily's drawings from various social events showed Whitmore consistently positioned to observe and influence key conversations. Judge Sullivan, though still officially recused, provided insight into how Whitmore had manipulated the legal system. Her social connections had influenced judicial appointments, her charity work had provided leverage over court officials, and her knowledge of family secrets had ensured cooperation from key legal figures. The unraveling of Whitmore's influence exposed how thoroughly she had corrupted Boston's social institutions. Schools, churches, charity boards, and social clubs had all been tools in her systematic exploitation of vulnerable families while maintaining her image as a pillar of the community. Detective Parker's investigation revealed offshore accounts where Whitmore had hidden her share of the profits from William's illegal activities. The money trail connected her to dozens of cases where families had been destroyed, children displaced, and environmental crimes covered up, all under the guise of maintaining social order. Elizabeth Bennet's return had been the first crack in Whitmore's carefully constructed facade. The older woman's methodical gathering of evidence, combined with her own social standing, had finally created a challenge Whitmore couldn't manipulate or dismiss. The exposure of her role as the true mastermind vindicated Sarah's instincts about systemic corruption within Boston's elite circles. As Whitmore's crimes came to light, the community's reaction shifted dramatically. Those who had followed her lead in ostracizing Sarah and the Andersons now faced their own moral reckonings. The exposure forced Boston's social elite to confront how their own prejudices and fears had made them complicit in Whitmore's schemes. The full scope of the conspiracy emerged through a series of documented discoveries that linked Margaret Whitmore's social manipulation to a vast network of corruption. Elizabeth Bennet's meticulous records revealed a pattern that spanned 3 decades, involving judges, social workers, medical professionals, and prominent families across Boston's elite circles. The first piece of concrete evidence came from Whitmore's own computer, seized during a raid of her home office. Encrypted files contained detailed dossiers on hundreds of families, categorizing them as either potential victims or useful allies. Each entry included personal information, financial vulnerabilities, and notes on how their situations could be exploited for profit or control. Detective Parker uncovered a series of shell companies that connected Whitmore's charitable foundation to William's law firm. These entities had been used to launder money from environmental settlements, with funds supposedly designated for children's welfare programs actually funding surveillance and intimidation of potential whistleblowers. Medical records from multiple hospitals revealed a pattern of falsified test results. Children showing symptoms of toxic exposure had their diagnoses changed to psychological issues, with referrals to specific therapists who were part of Whitmore's network. These altered medical histories had been used to justify removing children from families who threatened to expose corporate pollution. The conspiracy's reach into the foster care system proved extensive. Documents showed how Whitmore had personally selected and groomed foster parents like the Davidsons, choosing those who could be easily controlled through financial incentives or blackmail. The system had been weaponized to silence families while appearing to protect children. Of financial audits of Whitmore's charitable foundation exposed a sophisticated money laundering operation. Donations from guilty corporations had been funneled through legitimate-seeming programs, while actually funding a network of private investigators, corrupt officials, and professional witnesses who could be called upon to discredit troublesome families. Sarah's own case files revealed deliberate manipulation. Notes in Whitmore's handwriting showed how she had orchestrated Sarah's placement with the Davidsons, knowing their abusive tendencies would likely prevent her from discovering her Anderson connection. The calculated cruelty of this planning shocked even hardened investigators. Email correspondence between Whitmore and various school administrators demonstrated how she had systematically influenced educational policies. Children from targeted families were subtly marginalized, their academic and behavioral reports manipulated to support removal from their homes when necessary. Church records provided another layer of evidence. Whitmore had used her position on various religious committees to gather confidential information shared during counseling sessions. This personal information had been weaponized to pressure families into silence or compliance with Williams' firm's demands. The conspiracy's manipulation of the legal system was documented through a series of coded ledgers. Judges had received donations to their preferred charities, court clerks had been paid to misfile documents, and legal aid organizations had been infiltrated to identify and neutralize potential threats to the scheme. Mrs. Reynolds' daily logs, kept meticulously over years of service, provided crucial timeline verification. Her notes about visitors, conversations, and household changes helped investigators connect seemingly unrelated events into a clear pattern of organized corruption. Property records revealed how Whitmore had used her knowledge of planned corporate developments to profit from forced relocations. Families who lost their homes to toxic contamination often found their properties quickly purchased by shell companies linked to her foundation. The most damning evidence came from Whitmore's personal diary, discovered hidden in a false bottom of her antique desk. The entries detailed her progression from social manipulator to criminal mastermind, including her role in Elizabeth's death and her ongoing efforts to maintain control over Boston's elite through a combination of fear and favor. Detective Parker's team uncovered recordings of conference calls between Whitmore, William, and various corporate executives discussing how to handle problem families and potential liabilities. These conversations, saved by a conscience-stricken secretary, provided irrefutable proof of the conspiracy's organized nature. The evidence painted a picture of systematic exploitation masked by social respectability. Each document, email, and financial record added to the understanding of how thoroughly Whitmore had corrupted Boston's social institutions, using children as pawns in a game of power and profit. The path to redemption began in Judge Sullivan's private chambers, where he officially reinstated Sarah as the twins' guardian. Catherine, Michael, and the girls were present, their united support marking the first step toward healing the family's deep wounds. Sarah's return to the Anderson mansion was quiet but profound, marked by the twins' fierce hugs and Mrs. Reynolds' tearful welcome. Catherine initiated the family's redemption by establishing the Elizabeth Bennet Foundation, dedicated to reforming the foster care system and supporting environmental justice initiatives. The Foundation's first action was to provide legal assistance to families affected by Whitmore's conspiracy, with Sarah heading the child advocacy program. Michael's release from prison came with an unexpected opportunity. His environmental research, finally validated, became the foundation for new corporate accountability standards. Working alongside Catherine, he found a way to honor Elizabeth's memory while building a relationship with Emily that respected both her past and present family bonds. The twins showed remarkable resilience in their own journey of redemption. Emma channeled her protective instincts into starting a peer support group at school, helping other children dealing with family crises. Emily's art therapy sessions evolved into a program for young trauma survivors, her quiet strength inspiring others to find their voice. Mrs. Reynolds organized the household staff into a support network for families in crisis, turning the mansion into a safe haven for children transitioning between homes. Her years of observing family dynamics became valuable insight for social workers learning to identify signs of systematic abuse. The Anderson family's public acknowledgement of their past wrongs and commitment to making amends inspired other wealthy families to examine their own complicity in systemic injustice. Several prominent families came forward with their own stories, breaking the code of silence that had protected corrupt practices. Sarah's reunion with her mother's memory came through discovered letters and photographs, carefully preserved by Elizabeth Bennet. These documents helped her understand that her fight for justice was a continuation of her mother's courage in choosing love over social position. Detective Parker's role shifted from investigator to advisor, helping the Foundation identify and address vulnerabilities in the child protection system. His experience with the conspiracy made him a valuable ally in preventing similar schemes from taking root in other communities. The most powerful symbol of redemption came when the mansion's formal dining room was converted into a community meeting space. The table where William had once plotted with Whitmore became a place for healing conversations between divided families, supervised visitations, and support group meetings. Judge Sullivan, fully reinstated, used his experience to advocate for judicial reform, ensuring that family court judges would be better equipped to recognize and resist systematic manipulation. His public acknowledgement of his own past blindness to corruption encouraged other legal professionals to examine their practices. The Twin School, under new leadership, implemented programs to support students from families in crisis. Emma and Emily's experiences helped shape policies that balanced child protection with family preservation, recognizing that healing often required maintaining rather than severing family bonds. Catherine's research took a new direction, focusing on the health impacts of environmental justice issues on children. Her work, combined with Michael's environmental data, created powerful tools for communities fighting corporate pollution, ensuring that future generations would be better protected. The process of redemption touched every member of the household differently. For Sarah, it meant finally accepting that her past trauma had given her unique insights, rather than disqualifying her from helping others. For Catherine, it meant learning to balance professional ambition with family needs. For the twins, it meant understanding that family could be both chosen and given. Churches, schools, and social organizations that had shunned the Andersons began reaching out, asking how they could support the Foundation's work. The family's journey from disgrace to redemption opened conversations about privilege, responsibility, and the true meaning of social justice. The mansion itself seemed to reflect the change, its imposing facades softened by children's laughter, its formal gardens now including a therapeutic play area, its gates open to those seeking help rather than closed to protect secrets. The transformation of the Anderson family home symbolized the larger transformation of Boston's approach to wealth, power, and social responsibility. The Anderson family's reunification began on a warm spring morning, 1 year after the conspiracy's exposure. Sarah stood in the mansion's renovated garden, watching as Catherine, Michael, and the twins worked together planting Elizabeth's favorite flowers. The scene represented a new kind of family harmony, one built on truth rather than appearance. The official document making Sarah the twins' legal co-guardian arrived that morning bearing Judge Sullivan's signature. The papers acknowledged her dual role as both blood relative and chosen protector, formalizing what their hearts had known all along. Emma celebrated by creating a massive family tree artwork, with branches connecting everyone through both blood and choice. Catherine and Michael had developed a unique co-parenting arrangement that put Emily's needs first. Sunday dinners became a family tradition, with Michael sharing stories about Elizabeth while Catherine added memories of their childhood together. These gatherings helped Emily understand she could love both her birth parents and her adoptive mother without betraying anyone. Mrs. Reynolds witnessed the family's transformation with joy, noting how the formal dining room now hosted laughter-filled meals rather than tense business discussions. The household staff, once required to maintain strict boundaries, became extended family members, their own stories and lives woven into the mansion's new narrative. Emma's role in the family shifted as she released her self-imposed responsibility to be everyone's protector. With Sarah's guidance, she learned to be a sister first, discovering the freedom to be occasionally vulnerable, silly, or simply a child. Her relationship with Emily deepened as they shared both struggles and triumphs more openly. The discovery of Sarah's Anderson blood created unexpected healing opportunities. Catherine's parents, seeking to make amends for their role in Claire's exile, shared family albums and stories that helped Sarah understand her mother's courage. These connections gave the twins a richer sense of their family history, including both its flaws and its capacity for redemption. Elizabeth Bennet's influence remained strong in the reunified family. Her principles of unconditional love and moral courage guided their decisions, especially in establishing new family traditions that celebrated both unity and individuality. The library was renamed in her honor, filled with books about justice, healing, and the power of chosen family. Michael's integration into daily family life happened gradually, with both setbacks and breakthroughs. Emily's art therapy sessions became a special bonding time, where father and daughter communicated through shared creativity. Catherine found herself grateful for his presence, recognizing how his perspective enriched their daughter's life. The mansion itself underwent physical changes to reflect the family's new identity. Walls came down between formal and family spaces, gardens were redesigned for gathering rather than show, and family photographs now told honest stories instead of maintaining appearances. These changes symbolize the family's commitment to transparency and genuine connection. Sarah's role evolved beyond traditional guardianship. She became the family's emotional compass, helping them navigate complex relationships with wisdom gained from both personal experience and professional training. Her presence provided stability during difficult conversations about the past and hope for the future. Weekly family meetings, once dreaded formal affairs, transformed into open forums where even the youngest members could voice their feelings and concerns. These gatherings helped process ongoing challenges while celebrating small victories, creating a model of healthy family communication that impressed even their therapists. The twins' bond strengthened through their shared experience of family reunification. They developed their own rituals for supporting each other during difficult moments, while also maintaining their distinct identities. Their relationship became a blueprint for how family ties could be both unbreakable and flexible. Catherine discovered new aspects of motherhood as she learned to balance professional ambition with family connections. Her research now included regular lab days where the twins could safely explore science alongside her, combining her passion for discovery with quality family time. The reunification process wasn't without challenges, but the family faced them together, drawing strength from their shared commitment to honesty and healing. Each setback became an opportunity to demonstrate their new values, showing that true family bonds could withstand both conflict and change. Justice arrived with sweeping finality as Margaret Whitmore was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The courtroom was packed as Judge Sullivan delivered a verdict that acknowledged not just her legal crimes, but the moral corruption that had damaged countless families. Sarah sat with the twins, their hands linked as they watched the woman who had tried to destroy their family face the consequences of her actions. The Davidsons, facing multiple charges of child abuse and conspiracy, accepted a plea deal that required them to testify about the broader system of corruption. Their testimony helped prosecutors identify and protect other children placed in abusive homes through Whitmore's network. Frank Davidson's public apology to Sarah, though late, provided a measure of closure she hadn't known she needed. Catherine's research team received vindication as environmental impact studies were finally published, exposing decades of corporate negligence. The resulting class action lawsuits provided compensation for affected families, with funds specifically designated for children's medical care and educational support. Michael's original findings were credited, posthumously honoring Elizabeth's sacrifice. The foster care system underwent major reforms, with Sarah playing a key role in developing new oversight protocols. Her experiences, both personal and professional, helped create guidelines that emphasized child protection while supporting family reunification when possible. The Bennett Protocol, named for Elizabeth, became a model for child welfare programs nationwide. Emma and Emily found healing through helping others. Their peer support group at school expanded into a citywide program for children dealing with family trauma. Emily's art therapy techniques were incorporated into official counseling programs, while Emma's natural leadership abilities made her a powerful advocate for children's rights. Detective Parker established a specialized unit focused on investigating systematic abuse in child welfare systems. His team's work prevented several attempts to establish new corruption networks in other cities, using lessons learned from the Whitmore case to protect vulnerable families. The Anderson Mansion became a symbol of transformation as portions were converted into a children's advocacy center. The same rooms where Whitmore had once plotted to separate families now hosted reunification meetings and therapy sessions. Mrs. Reynolds supervised these transitions, ensuring the space remained both welcoming and secure. Judge Sullivan's courtroom adopted new procedures for handling family cases, incorporating insights from the Whitmore conspiracy. His emphasis on listening to children's voices and examining systemic patterns of abuse influenced judicial training programs across the state. The Sullivan Guidelines became required reading for family court judges. The Elizabeth Bennet Foundation expanded its work to include legal advocacy, environmental justice, and family support services. Catherine and Michael co-chaired the board, their shared commitment to preventing future abuses healing old wounds between them. The Foundation's first major victory was securing legislation that strengthened whistleblower protections for those reporting child abuse. Sarah's role in exposing the conspiracy earned her a position on the state's Child Welfare Oversight Committee. Her recommendations led to improved screening processes for foster parents and better support services for children in the system. She insisted that lived experience be valued alongside professional credentials in child protection work. The Twin School implemented new protocols for identifying and supporting students facing family crises. Emma's insight helped create a peer mentoring program, while Emily's artwork decorated the new Student Support Center. Their experiences helped shape policies that protected student privacy while ensuring access to necessary help. The community's healing process included regular forums where affected families could share their stories and support each other. These meetings, hosted in the mansion's converted dining room, broke down social barriers and created lasting bonds between families from different backgrounds who had all been touched by the conspiracy. Mrs. Reynolds organized the household staff into a support network for families in crisis, proving that healing often came through helping others. Their practical knowledge about creating safe, nurturing environments became a valuable resource for families rebuilding after trauma. The justice system's acknowledgement of systemic abuse opened doors for other survivors to come forward. Sarah worked with legal teams to ensure these new cases were handled with sensitivity and thoroughness, preventing any repeat of past cover-ups. The community healing began at a town hall meeting in Brighton Academy's auditorium, where former adversaries sat together to address the divisions Whitmore's conspiracy had created. Catherine opened the session with a powerful speech acknowledging how privilege had blinded many to systematic abuse, setting a tone of honest reflection rather than blame. The Parents' Association, under new leadership, transformed from an exclusive social club into an advocacy group for all children. Former members who had shunned the Andersons now worked alongside families they had once ostracized, creating mentoring programs that bridged social and economic divides. Dr. Chen spearheaded a medical community initiative to review cases where children's symptoms had been dismissed or misdiagnosed. This process led to proper treatment for many affected families and created new protocols for identifying environmental health impacts on children, especially in underserved communities. The local church became a center for reconciliation as Reverend Thompson facilitated healing circles where families shared their experiences of betrayal and recovery. These sessions helped wealthy families understand their unintended complicity in systemic abuse while giving voice to those who had been silenced. Brighton Academy established a scholarship program named for Elizabeth Bennet, specifically supporting children from families affected by environmental justice issues. The school's commitment to diversity and inclusion became a model for other private institutions, demonstrating how elite education could serve broader community needs. Mrs. Reynolds organized a series of informal gatherings where household staff from different families could safely share their observations of past abuse and support each other's healing. These meetings broke down traditional service barriers and created lasting bonds across social classes. The legal community, led by Judge Sullivan, developed new ethical guidelines emphasizing lawyers' responsibility to recognize and report systematic abuse. Law firms throughout Boston underwent voluntary audits of their practices, particularly in cases involving children and environmental justice. Sarah's child advocacy work expanded to include training programs for teachers, medical professionals, and social workers, helping them identify signs of systematic exploitation. Her emphasis on listening to children's voices transformed how institutions approach child protection. The twins' peer support group evolved into a citywide network connecting children from different backgrounds who had experienced family trauma. Their success in creating safe spaces for sharing and healing inspired similar programs in other communities. Local media outlets, chastened by their role in perpetuating social divisions, developed new guidelines for reporting on family cases. They focused on investigative journalism that exposed systemic issues while protecting vulnerable individuals, particularly children. The Anderson Mansion's transformation into a community center symbolized broader social changes. Weekly dinners brought together families from all backgrounds, with Catherine and Michael hosting discussions about rebuilding trust and creating genuine community connections. Detective Parker's police unit conducted workshops for community members on recognizing and reporting systematic abuse, emphasizing that protection of children required cooperation across social boundaries. These sessions helped restore trust between law enforcement and previously marginalized communities. The environmental justice movement gained new allies as wealthy families, now understanding the human cost of corporate negligence, joined efforts to protect vulnerable communities. This collaboration led to successful campaigns for stricter environmental regulations and corporate accountability. Social clubs that had once excluded families based on wealth or status revised their policies, recognizing that true community strength came from diversity and inclusion. The annual charity gala, once a symbol of elite exclusivity, became a fundraiser for children's advocacy programs. The reconciliation process faced challenges, particularly from those who had benefited from the old system. However, the visible success of new inclusive programs, especially in helping children, gradually won over even the most resistant community members. On the 5th anniversary of Sarah's return to the Anderson Mansion, the family gathered in the renovated garden for a celebration that embodied their journey's deeper meaning. Emma and Emily, now thriving teenagers, had organized the event to honor not just their family's healing, but the broader lesson their story offered about the true nature of love and family. Sarah stood before the assembled guests, her voice steady as she shared their hard-won wisdom. Family isn't defined by blood or legal documents. It's built through choices we make, everyday choices to love, to protect, to forgive, and to grow together. Our strength comes not from perfection, but from how we face our imperfections together. Catherine followed, addressing the complex journey of motherhood. I learned that being a mother isn't about maintaining appearances or meeting society's expectations. It's about having the courage to love our children for who they are, to admit our mistakes, and to keep choosing love even when it's difficult. Michael, his hand resting gently on Emily's shoulder, spoke about redemption. Life gives us second chances, not to erase our past, but to build something better from it. Every family has broken pieces, but how we put them back together. That's what matters. Sometimes the strongest bonds are formed in the process of healing. The twins had prepared a joint speech that moved many to tears. We used to think having a perfect family meant having no problems, Emma began. Now we know it means having people who stick with you through the problems. Emily finished, their words demonstrating the deeper understanding they had gained through their experiences. Mrs. Reynolds, surrounded by the household staff who had become family, shared her observation: true family extends beyond walls and titles. It's found in small acts of kindness, in showing up for each other, in creating safe spaces where everyone can be their authentic selves. Elizabeth Bennet's principles, lived out through Sarah's guardianship, became the foundation of their family philosophy that love is an action, not just a feeling, that protection means empowering, not controlling, and that family bonds are strengthened, not weakened, by including more people in the circle of care. The mansion itself stood as a testament to their message, its doors open to other families seeking healing and connection. The formal gardens where social status once reigned had become a place where children from all backgrounds played freely, their laughter a reminder of what really mattered. Judge Sullivan, speaking as both legal authority and family friend, emphasized the broader implications. What the Andersons have shown us is that justice and love are intertwined. When we expand our definition of family, we create a more just and compassionate society for all children. Detective Parker added his perspective on protection. Real security doesn't come from walls or wealth. It comes from building communities where everyone looks out for each other's children, where love isn't limited by social boundaries. The celebration concluded with a tradition the family had developed, each person adding a leaf to their family tree art installation, writing on it a lesson learned about love and connection. The tree had grown over the years, its branches intertwining like the relationships that had formed through their journey. Sarah's final words captured the essence of their story. In choosing to love each other through the darkest times, we discovered that family isn't about who you're born to or who raises you. It's about who stays, who fights alongside you, who helps you become your best self. Most importantly, it's about passing that love forward to others who need it. As twilight fell over the garden, the gathering exemplified their message: biological family, chosen family, friends and community members, all connected by the understanding that love, when given freely and authentically, has the power to heal, transform, and create belonging where once there was isolation. The Anderson family's journey from tragedy to triumph had become more than just their story. It was a beacon of hope for others, proving that even the deepest wounds could heal when surrounded by unconditional love and unwavering support. Their legacy would live on through the lives they touched and the changes they inspired in their community's understanding of what makes a true family. Dear friends, we hope this story of love, resilience, and the true meaning of family has touched your heart. If our tale of the Anderson family's journey has moved you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Just type 1 to let us know you support stories like this. Your support means everything to our team. By subscribing to our channel, you help us continue creating meaningful narratives that explore the depths of human connection and healing. Please consider sharing this video with friends and family who might find comfort or inspiration in this story. Don't forget to hit the like button if you believe in the power of chosen family and unconditional love. Every like, comment, and subscription encourages us to keep crafting stories that matter. Thank you for being part of our storytelling journey. Together, we can spread messages of hope and resilience to those who need them most.